maybe being able to beat BYU. That was as good as it was back in the day. It's been a lot better for a long, long time. Is this the beginning of what could be a long tenure of Utah football that has not been as exciting, that will not be as exciting as it has been over the past decade? I don't know. I can't say that today. I don't want to do that thing on the show today. But we will get into it on a Monday afternoon. We have good guests to talk college football. BYU just gets another miraculous win Friday night in Provo, beating Oklahoma State. They did allow 4 touchdown drives of over 70 yards. I still think there are some questions about this team between the 20s, but there's no question about their ability to do what they need to do to simply win football games every single week. They're the number 11 team in the country. They're 7-0. They're 4-0 in conference play. And they're going to be on the road in Orlando to take on UCF. And I can promise you, though, there will be a lot of BYU fans on the road in Orlando. I can promise you that. Okay, just squeeze in a little trip to Disney, then watch a little BYU football as BYU will be on the road to take on UCF. They're going to try to continue their undefeated season this weekend, and Utah is just trying to get right. I thought they would last week. They didn't, and I was wrong. But we'll do a lot of college football on the show today, of course. It is opening week for the National Basketball Association. We love the NBA around here. We love our Utah Jazz around here. Jazz open up against Memphis Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at the Delta Center. We'll do a little Jazz on the show today. RSL sets a season single record for points, 59 points, as a result of a 2-1 win over Vancouver. Damir Kreilach back in town. RSL certainly a little bit fortuitous with an own goal late to give them that 2-1 win. Now they're going to host Minnesota coming up next Tuesday in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs. So we'll do a little RSL on the program today as well. So like I said, good guest list. We're going to try to up the mood for Utah fans. We're going to try to fairly cover Brigham Young down south. We're going to do some NBA. We're going to do some RSL. And your pro football weekend wraps up tonight with a Monday Night Football doubleheader. You can hear some Monday Night Football on our radio station right after we say goodnight about 6 o'clock today. All right. Going to bring in Bill Riley, the voice himself. Riles will stop by right out of the gates. He's our first guest on this Monday afternoon. After Bill stops by, we're going to bring in Tom Haberstroh. That's right. If you are a longtime listener of my show, first of all, thank you. Part of our family. Second of all, you know that we do the NBA Daily Assist during the NBA season with some of the best NBA guests around. Tim McMahon, Zach Harper, Dave McMenamin, Tim Bontemps, and, of course, Tom Haberstroh. We'll bring in guys like Amin El-Hassan and some other good NBA guests throughout the course of the year. But with the NBA opening this week, with the Jazz opening on Wednesday, we're going to do a little NBA on the show today. We'll let you hear from Coach Witt, who addressed the media today and talked about the change at offensive coordinator and what's next for his football team. Hoping for Diego Luna coming up after 4 o'clock. Diego got another goal over the weekend for RSL. Oh, confirmed. Diego will stop by. Look at that. Right now, I would say Diego's the best player on the team. And that includes Chicho, who is a goal scorer that doesn't score goals. Hasn't scored a goal since early July. So Diego will stop by today. And then our buddy Josh Furlong, who covers the Utes for KSL, will join us later in the 4 o'clock hour. So Bill Riley, Tom Haberstroh, Coach Witt, Diego Luna, Josh Furlong, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, on a Monday afternoon. And that guy, Porter Larson, on a Monday. All right, look. If you're a millennial Ute fan, go vape or whatever. But, like, the way people are reacting, the world is not ending. But I will say this is as bad as it's been in a long, long time. And I understand the frustration around the community as far as Utah football.
Yeah, well, good point there, right? There's bigger things than football. And there is nothing like a college football fan scorned, right? Like, I genuinely believe, covering this business now for the better part of 7-8 years, I don't know that I've ever seen adult humans react to things the way they sometimes do react to college football. I don't know that I necessarily like sometimes the way it looks, but I also do understand on occasion the frustration, Spence, and especially on a night where your offense trots out there and does something we haven't seen from a Utah team in those 7-8 years I've been covering the team. That was the worst performance at home that I have seen in my entire time covering this team. And as you mentioned, yeah, there's changes that need to be had, but the issues that I have been seeing on film and on the field aren't necessarily all covered up by switching your play caller, and that is another thing that I like to harp on here. But yeah, obviously a tough day for Utah fans, a really good weekend for BYU fans, RSL fans, and Utah hockey fans as well. The market is having a really good time outside of the fans on the Hill, who, again, I do have empathy for. But we'll see how this one rolls out, because we've been a little spoiled by success up there for a while, and that is not the case in the last 3 weeks here.
Yep, been a rough stretch. Hopefully they can turn it around coming up this weekend, and we're going to bring in Riles right off the top today. The voice of the Utes will join us to maybe help us understand what's going on. But before we get to Bill, courtesy of our friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, just a couple of home Utah games left. Make sure your tailgate is dialed in at Standard Restaurant Supply. You can go to As Ted Lasso taught us all, it is the hope that kills you. And Utah football, prior to the start of this season, was picked by the media to win the Big 12. They were installed as the favorite to win the Big 12 by our friends in the desert. They're actually not our friends. They're trying to take all of our money. But Las Vegas installed Utah as the favorite. Media picked them to win. And even if there were college football analysts and media members out there that didn't pick the Utes to win the conference, Utah was probably one of the top three in most every single predictive model that I read. It was Utah. Ironically enough, it was Oklahoma State, who has not won a conference game, and it was Kansas State. Out of those three, the only team that is still, well, I'll say realistically alive to win the Big 12 championship is Kansas State. Brigham Young and Iowa State are the only two teams that are clean. Iowa State is the favorite to win the Big 12 and go to the CFP, and BYU is right behind them. We'll get to BYU in a moment. Obviously, what's happened here in Salt Lake City with Utah football has caught everybody off guard. And by everybody, I mean quite literally everybody. I mean, it's one thing to miss. It's another thing to miss like this. And it's also one thing to be bad, one thing to have a down year. Every program in college football, no matter who it is, at some point will have a down year. Now, that depends on your expectations. Kalen DeBoer is learning what the expectations are down in Tuscaloosa, as this is, by any measurable metric for a Bama fan, a down year for Alabama. It's one thing to have a bad year. It's quite another thing to be picked as the favorite to win a conference and potentially be one of the worst teams in that conference. And unfortunately, that's where we're at today with the Utes. That's what the numbers say. Offensively, they're 14th in the conference in scoring. In several offensive measurable metrics, they're dead last. They're going to take on Houston coming up this week. Most people believe Houston is the worst team in the conference, but Houston beat TCU. And, of course, TCU rolls into Rice-Eccles on Saturday night and completely did everything that I did not think they were capable of doing. As we talked about the game last week, the numbers and the metrics said that TCU was a bad defensive team against the run. So I thought Utah and Mekhi Bernard were going to be able to run the football against TCU. Now, it's tough to run the football when the other team is stacking the box and daring your young quarterback to beat you, and TCU sold out on stopping the run. And so Utah had to go away from it, even though at times it was successful. Mekhi averaged 4.2 yards a carry. That's fine. It's not great. He had a long of 20, and then his other 12 carries, for the most part, weren't all that successful because Texas Christian was simply selling out to stop the run, daring Isaac to beat them, which they could not do. Obviously, the play calling was called into question by most anybody who watched the game, not just fans, but media members and the broadcasters alike. And, of course, that led to the news that Andy Ludwig has now stepped down as Utah's offensive coordinator. And, ultimately, I do believe at some point it will be only fair to Coach Ludd, and for me that point is today. Like, we are all prisoners of the moment, and let's be clear. Sports is simply a results-orientated business, and it's about what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me right now? It's very rare for any coach to have so much built-in equity that he can continue to stumble over himself and keep his job. I mean, the exception is like Bill Belichick, who won 7 Super Bowls, and the Pats were bad for the final 3-4 years of his tenure, but you keep him around because he won you 7 rings, right? And so it's rare for a coach to have a bunch of built-in equity to be able to clearly be inept at his job and keep that job. And Andy Ludwig, a total of 10 years here, and I believe he was even a grad assistant back in the early 90s. Like, ultimately, if you look at the entire scope of Coach Ludd's tenure here, it was very successful. And certainly being the OC for, 2019, Tyler Huntley, and then the Cam Rising years when Cam was healthy, 21, 22. Those are 3 of maybe the top 5 or 6 offenses we've ever had for the Utes. And that's with Coach Ludd as the OC, and that's with Coach Ludd as the play caller, and Coach Ludd as the recruiter. He deserves credit for what he's done, but he also deserves blame for the unmitigated disaster that the offense has been this year. Is it tough luck that his quarterback got hurt? Yeah, it is. But for the second straight year, you didn't have the right contingency under center in the event that Cameron got hurt. That's not a knock on Isaac, because I do think Isaac has more talent than either Nate or Bryson did a year ago. But whatever the dynamics were in place that did not allow this offense to just be average after losing their starting quarterback, the blame goes everywhere, including Kyle, and he knows that. You're the head coach of a college football team. You're the CEO of the program. You are held accountable when it comes to the results, and you're given a bunch of love and a lot of money when you win conference championships and games. But it's fair to ask questions of everybody, top to bottom, when you have a fall-on-your-face failure like we've had this year for Utah football. That's what it's been. Like I said, it's one thing to be bad and to have a down year. But when everybody under the sun thinks you have enough talent and enough experience and the coaching pedigree to go win a title at a conference, and you might be one of the 3 worst teams in that conference, questions have to be asked, including that of the athletic director. What is Mark Harlan thinking today? Mark Harlan moved off of Larry Kraskowiak when Larry showed some signs of maybe getting this thing back and ticking to make his own hire on the basketball side. And as much as I like Craig, so far that basketball hire has left some to be desired based off one thing and one thing only, and that is results. If you listen to the show, I am a results over vibes guy. Congrats on your vibes. Go win a game. I don't give a rip if you get along. Go win a game, okay? I come from the school of thought, Kobe, Shaq, Michael Jordan punching teammates. Okay, I'm not accepting that behavior. Iron sharpens iron, and I don't give a rip if you go have dinner after the game. Just go get results. That's the way I think. That's the way I believe sports teams should be run. And right now, the results are not good enough. And I wondered for sure, I really wondered for sure whether or not a change would be made. Because oftentimes, regardless of results, folks around here don't like change, so they let coaches stick around probably a little bit longer than they should. So top to bottom, questions should be asked. That's fair today. After 3 straight losses, when you're averaging 12 points a game, the OC is out. Mike Bajakian is in. He's been around the program for a while. He essentially has had a lifetime in coaching starting in 96, and he's always been on the offensive side of the football. Offensive analyst, now quarterback's coach, and interim offensive coordinator. And as far as what I'm expecting to see from Mike, we'll have to wait and see. The proof is in the pudding. It has to look a lot better. And it has to look a lot better starting on Saturday, or else we need to ask some more questions about exactly what's going on with this program. You cannot continue to ask your community for donations and money and investment if you're going to put a subpar product on the field, and that's what it's been so far. All right, quick anecdote. My son, who now lives in New York, and he's working, he's making his way through the world, came in town over the weekend, spent some time, and the first time he walked in the house, he saw me, he said, "You look like you're 30 years old again." I'm not close to 30. But I've been working hard to try to get back in shape, and I've been utilizing the products at Lifestyle Men's Health, namely testosterone therapy and Vitality Peptides. Testosterone for about a year, Vitality Peptides for about 4 months. I look better, I feel better, I'm sleeping better, I have more energy, there's no brain fog. Let's bring in Ken now from Lifestyle Men's Health. Ken, what's your experience been with Lifestyle Men's Health?
Well, Spence, what I wanted to talk about today is, as you mentioned in the past, that, I might have a few years on you. I'm in my mid-60s. And there's a lot of men out there that maybe have given up on, having those, physical relationships with their partners because they just don't feel it. They don't have the drive. But what we're here to tell you that you can get back, on the track again, if you will. using testosterone replacement, using peptides, also dealing with the ED through stem cell therapy. All of this matters to us men. So for all those out there that maybe want to give up, there's hope. So give us a try, and we can help you.
All right, Ken, what's the special offer you have for listeners who give you a call today?
This is what we're going to do. They sign up for that, then we're going to give them 3 months of testosterone for free. That's huge.
That is huge. That's massive savings. That's actually the best deal. And you guys have offered good deals, but that's the best deal that you guys have offered so far. So if you are really in your 30s all the way up to your 60s and 70s, if you find yourself a little tired, if you want your workouts to be better, if you want your body to be transformed, I'm telling you, you can do it because I've done it with Lifestyle Men's Health. So 3 months, free testosterone. My goodness, I wish I waited to call. You guys should call today. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203, or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Spence.
All right, Bill Riley joins us coming up next, right here on ESPN 700. Week 7 of the NFL will wrap up tonight with a Monday Night Football doubleheader. It's the Ravens and the Bucs. And the Chargers at the Cardinals. You'll hear Monday Night Football right here on ESPN 700 after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock. Our next guest, the voice himself, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, on a Monday afternoon. Riles, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
Spence, I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Obviously, Ute fans are not good because, quite frankly, it has not been good enough. Let's just start with the news. And it felt like something was going to happen. I didn't know that Coach Ludd would step down, but Andy Ludwig out, Mike Bajakian in. Your reaction, Bill, to the big news that's broke over the past 24 hours?
Well, when Kyle talked to us on the post-game show Saturday night, Spence, I went back to him on a quote that he had made to the media about 10 minutes before, that he was basically going to examine everything. Everything would be under the microscope, under scrutiny over the next 48 hours within the program. And, you know, without saying it, he was hinting there could be changes coming. He just kind of repeated what he said to the media. So I kind of felt like he was going to do something to shake something up. Now, did I expect Andy to step down? I didn't, just simply because those two have been friends for a long time. They've got a lot of history together, not just at Utah, going all the way back to the Idaho State days. But it was pretty apparent to everybody that the offense, with Cam Isaac, without Cam Isaac, Isaac Wilson, no Isaac Wilson, whatever it might be, the offense was not doing what it needed to do, and something had to change. So I was a little surprised at the news with Andy, but that's where we are right now. So, yeah, it did catch me off guard a little bit last night.
So what do you know about Mike, and what should our listeners know about Mike, the guy that's now in charge of calling plays?
He's been around. I mean, he's a guy that's been at a lot of different programs, Tennessee, Cincinnati, most recently Northwestern. Got a lot of experience as both a coordinator and a quarterbacks coach, which is kind of what he was. Kyle said that earlier today, which if you're around the program a little bit, he's worked very closely with the quarterbacks this year. And, you know, I guess you kind of view this as maybe a tryout. Let's see what he can do with the offense here over the next, 5 games, the next, 6-7 weeks. See what he can do with the young quarterback with Isaac Wilson, and see what he can do to kind of get this thing back on track a little bit, because obviously it's not been there, but he's run all kinds of offenses. He's run spread offenses. He's run traditional pro offenses. Kyle likes him. He says he's got a lot of energy, real upbeat guy, kind of a hands-on guy. He was a guy on the field. Andy was the guy up in the box calling the plays. Bajakian was kind of the guy, his conduit down on the field with the quarterback. So I can't imagine you're overhauling the offense completely. You're not going to go from what you run now to something crazy like the air raid. But I'm really curious to see what tweaks are made, because you're not going to keep doing the same thing. That's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I would expect there would be some changes this week. I'm just curious to see in, 4, 5, 6 days how much Bajakian can tweak this thing a little bit.
So, away from the play calling, which I think most people believe has been the biggest issue, what other issues, and let's just stick with the offense for now, and obviously it all has to be colored with the context of losing your QB1. We understand that, but we need to move on from that storyline and figure out how this can be a little bit better. From your vantage point, a guy who gets a front row seat to all these games, outside of the play calling, what do you think the other issues are offensively? Because when you look at the stats, they're either 10th or lower in pretty much everything. They're actually 9th in rushing, 14th in scoring, 15th in yards per game in the conference. It has not been good enough. It can't all be the play calling. What are the other issues, Bill?
Well, I think it stems from that, the play calling a little bit, but it's also playing to maybe what your strengths should be. The other night, I think the most consistent weapon on this Utah football team has been Mekhi Bernard. I don't think anybody can argue that. Mekhi's got, 800 yards rushing this year. He catches the ball well out of feels like they've had their best chance. They've either won or had their best chances to win. I kind of felt like they found their great recipe, especially with Isaac at quarterback in that Oklahoma State game. Now, it's turned out we found out that Oklahoma State's not a great team. They're not. But, he got 25 carries in that game. I think he got 27 or 28 touches. He had 182 yards. He just ran really hard. The offensive line is good. They didn't have their best game Saturday night, but they've been really good this year. And Utah's really been able to run the ball when they've committed to it. So I think maybe playing to your strengths and also set up a game plan for your young quarterback. Isaac started 4 games. He's played in 5 or whatever it is. He's still a young guy learning here. Scott, I get this stuff from Scott Mitchell a lot because Scott's gone through this as a college quarterback and as a pro, and he used to always talk about Don Shula. He said Don Shula would come to me, especially that year he was playing for Marino when Marino got hurt. He said, "What are the 15 plays you like best? What do you feel most?" And then Shula would be like, "Call them, run them, do that." Find out what Isaac Wilson likes. Find out what he feels most comfortable doing, and then maybe build that game plan around that.
So Houston is the opponent coming up, and I think a lot of people believe Houston might be the worst team in the Big 12, but they did beat TCU, who beat Utah on Saturday. Obviously, the conference is drunk, dude. It's just weird. Every weekend, weird things happen. What should Ute fans hope to see on the road against Houston coming up on Saturday?
Well, first of all, you should hope to see a healthy defense. I would hope to see Connor O'Toole back. Been out a lot. You had Karenni Reed back. You had Keanu Tanavasa back. I think those guys appeared. I mean, you held TCU to 13 points. If you then factor him back in the equation, that's Connor O'Toole. I think you've got your defense at full strength. So that would be one thing. And the other thing would be, again, a Utah offense that, gets into the red zone and converts in the red zone. You're right. Houston's not good. And if Utah's got top end of the conference talent, they haven't played to the level of that talent really most of this year, even in the games they won. I would hope to think now with some changes made, with Isaac Wilson being installed as the man, and then playing to the level of your offense. And because they've got playmakers. Brant Keithley's a playmaker. Money Parks, we saw Saturday night, he's a playmaker. Kai Bernard's a playmaker. They've got an embarrassment of riches in that tight end room. I would hope that they could play to the level of the talent they have on that offensive side of the football against Houston, because I think if they come close to that, they should win that game. But as you said, this league's drunk right now, and teams on certain days rise. I mean, Texas Tech was playing well, and then Baylor went on the road and beat Texas Tech in Lubbock by 23. Outside of Iowa State and BYU right now, it's hard for me to figure out the rest of this league.
So Utah, number 2 in total defense. They're number 4 in rushing defense. They're number 5 in passing defense. I mean, ultimately, most of the defensive metrics, they're 9th in sacks. I think Kyle would like to see that certainly up a little bit. And they're last in forced fumbles. They're not turning the other team over as much as I'm sure Kyle would like. 14th in fumbles recovered. But most of the defensive metrics still indicate first in opponent's first down. They still indicate they're first in opponent third down conversion. Most of the defensive metrics still indicate this is a good, solid defense. What ultimately do you need to see offensively to balance it out to give Ute fans confidence that the rest of the way they can either be in or win most of the remaining games on their schedule?
I think it's when you get in the red zone that you score touchdowns, Spence. Yeah, Saturday night was they didn't get in the red zone Saturday night once. I can't remember a game in recent memory where they didn't even get in the red zone. I think if you get in the red zone, you've got to pay it off with touchdowns. They've kicked a lot of field goals this year. Cole Becker's had a really nice year, was Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week a week ago. I think when you get in that red zone, you've got to score some touchdowns. To your point, yeah, they haven't turned the ball over a bunch this year, but 2 of those metrics you mentioned, I think they were they lead the Big 12. They were second in the nation in opponent first downs, and they lead the Big 12, and they're maybe top 5 in the country in opponent third down conversion. As long as you can get the other team off the field, it's almost as good as forcing turnovers is better because you're shortening the field. But you're right. I just think when you get in that red zone, you've got to be able to pay it off. I'm a Chiefs fan too. The Chiefs have been bad at that. Then yesterday they go on the road in San Francisco and they get in the red zone 5 times and score 4. It takes the pressure off your defense when your offense can put some of those points up on the board.
Oh, I'm so sorry that the Chiefs have been bad at one thing, Bill. Oh, yeah, they just win no matter what. It doesn't matter what the. My sincere apologies as a Jets fan that you found one metric that the Chiefs aren't awesome at.
Hey, you've got a team in the World Series. Okay,
that's true. That's true.
That's true.
That's true. Go Yanks.
I'm kind of, you know what? It's weird here, but I'm kind of anti-Dodger. I don't know what it is about that. As much as I like Ohtani, I don't know what it is. At least Yankee fans show up on a regular basis. I don't know what it is. There's something about this Dodger team, and I like Juan Soto too. Judge, everybody likes Judge. He seems like a nice guy. I kind of like Juan Soto as well. You think they're going to spend for him?
Bill Riley, Yankee fan? Question mark? Yeah, they got to pay.
No, not Yankee fan. There's some things I like about this Yankee team.
Fair enough. All right, what are you willing to say? Because look, if we want to get crazy optimistic, we can say there's head-to-head games left against BYU and Iowa State, the two best teams in the conference right now.
And Colorado.
Correct.
Let's not factor Colorado out of this thing either, and Colorado.
Correct. So if we want to get weird, we can talk like that, right? Now, you would need BYU to suffer 2 other losses and Iowa State to suffer 2 other losses. And, with Iowa State, it's going to be tough. They do have K-State at the end, but other than Utah, it's a pretty manageable schedule. And say what you want about the questions that remain with BYU, that schedule has turned out to be a little bit more manageable than possible. But crazy things happen. There was one year where Utah needed 97 tiebreakers to win the Pac-12, and they got it. What are you willing to say about where Utah's at today and what possibilities still remain?
Well, I think you have to run. I mean, if we're talking about possibilities and getting to Dallas to play in the Big 12 championship, I think they're slim right now. But as you said, you've got those teams that you've got to play. You have to root for chaos, and you're going to have to run the table. So run the table, root for chaos. Maybe you've got an outside shot, but I've done what you've done. I've looked at those schedules, and BYU's schedule based on how they've played, and they've found ways to win. Kalani's team plays really hard, and they take advantage of opportunities, and somehow teams fall down when the open field when they've got to tackle guys at the end of games. But they're good. Their schedule's favorable. Iowa State, they've got K-State, yes, and Utah, but they came back the other night kind of like BYU did and found a way to win that game. So it's going to be really tough. But to me, you're not worrying about big picture right now. You've got to work small to big here. You've got to fix the small things that are going on, your offense, some of these other things, and then beat Houston, and then get into your bye week, and then you'll have a little bit more time with the new interim OC to work on some things, and then get yourself ready for the rivalry game. But then you've got Colorado and you've got Iowa State, and hey, UCF, they're not great, but they're not bad either. The month of November is going to be a daunting month for Utah. But to me, big picture, I'm not even looking at that. You got to fix what's ailing you right now and beat Houston on the road on Saturday, then get your bye week.
How much do you think the sting reverberates even a little bit more that really every single element that we thought would be part of the Utah football experience this year is happening about 40 miles down south of here?
I think it reverberates more with the fans than it does with the players. Just simply, and I say that simply because most of the guys that are on the Utah roster haven't really known BYU as a rival. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Some of them know about the rivalry. The in-state guys a little bit, but Dorian Singer, he didn't see that. Micah Pittman, he didn't see that. Some of these guys that have been on the team, but they haven't played for a few years, and it's not a rivalry to them. I think to in-state guys, but I think obviously the folks that are listening to you and I chat right now, that they're the ones that are feeling this a lot more because the team 40 miles south that wasn't supposed to they've almost reversed seasons. It's like Freaky Friday here. They've swapped bodies. BYU's having the season that a lot of Utah fans thought they would have, and Utah's having the season that maybe they thought a lot of BYU fans would have.
All right, before I set you loose, since we didn't have a chance to connect last week, I haven't talked to you since Cameron went down once again. So just your thoughts, the Voice's take on how we should remember Cam, if this is it, after another season-ending injury, and your take on whether or not he should entertain the option of coming back for an 8th year.
Well, I think Cam should do what Cam wants to do. I don't know where or how that will what that would look like. I don't, because he's been a broken player now for a few years and injured. So I don't know what that looks like, Spence. But here's what I will say about his legacy. This is a guy that got Utah over the hump in Power 5 football. They were a solid Power 5 program that was kind of knocking on the door for a couple of years. And when Cam Rising took the reins against San Diego State back in 2021, everything changed for this program. It just simply did. They became, one of the favorites. They became a national name. They became a team that played for conference championships and appeared in the Rose Bowl. The ending stinks. It stinks for Utah football. It stinks for Cam Rising. It stinks for Utah fans. But what he did on the field, is the legacy as good as it could have been had he led them to a Big 12 title in the playoffs? No. But this is still a guy team. And so I think that's how you remember him if you're a Utah fan.
I lied. One more. How should we remember Coach Ludd as he walks away?
Another guy that was the side of the good ledger certainly outweighs the side of the bad ledger. It was a tough end here this year. The offense struggled. Remember, Andy Ludwig was also the offensive coordinator when they went undefeated and beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Those first 3 or 4 years of the Whittingham era, the last 3 or 4 years have been terrific. Let's be fair. You and I both know this. It's never black and white. The offensive struggles. Andy's the offensive coordinator. He felt responsible or felt the majority of that responsibility, so he chose to step down. But it doesn't all fall on him, just like it doesn't fall on any head coach when things go sideways too, but that's the position you're in. But I think that he has given so much to this football program. And, again, you just saw the offense stabilize and take off when he had that great healthy quarterback in Cam Rising. So I think Utah fans should be really appreciative for the time that Andy Ludwig gave to this program too.
Agreed. Well said, Bill. Thanks for the time, man. Have a good week, all right?
See you next week, Spence.
The voice of the Utes. We'll be live in studio next Tuesday, by the way. Keep that in mind. Did a little producing this morning. Probably should loop in my producer on that. Bill's going to be live in studio
I'll plan on
Tuesday. it. Yeah. There you go. You're welcome. Just wearing a bunch of hats today.
Thank you.
Not a big deal. All right, quick anecdote. My son was in town over the weekend and haven't seen him in a minute. And when he walked in the house and saw me, he said, "You look like you did when you were 30 years old." So I've been able to get back in shape. It's taken some work. It's taken some time, but it hasn't taken as much work as you typically would need because of the biohacking, as Dr. Peterson calls it. I've had some testosterone therapy for the past year. I've been using Vitality Peptides for the past 4 months. And it has made a world of difference. My friends at Lifestyle Men's Health can help you out. Ken, what would you say to our listeners about your experience with Lifestyle Men's Health?
It's life-changing. Just like you said, Spence, what it's done for you. Think about when you're in your mid-60s and, you're feeling vibrant. You got that energy. I play tennis 3 to 4 times a week. A patient asked me the other day, "How's your knees?" And it was crazy. I go, "They don't hurt." Where I remember my knees hurting, in prior years. So, you remember what Dr. Angelo Peterson says, you never know how bad you're feeling until you start feeling good. And we can help with that, man. We can optimize our health. We can optimize our energy and get that drive back. And literally, like I said, it's changed my life.
And you have a special offer for our listeners today that by far is, and you have had a lot of good offers, but this is the offer that I think stands out to me among the rest. Outline that for our listeners, please.
You bet. And the reason why I'm giving this offer is because it helps with everything within our body. So the ED treatment, we're giving half off. That we've done that before. But we're also including 3 months of testosterone for free for people that sign up today. And that's a game changer.
It is a game changer. It saves you a lot of money, and it'll get you a feel for what it's like. So you basically can try it and see if it works, which it will. I can guarantee it. Here's the number, okay? Call today. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203. Or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it.
All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Coming up next, it is opening week for the NBA. If you are a Ute fan that's sad today, maybe you're excited about pro basketball, it's time for the 2024 debut of the NBA Daily Assist with our buddy Tom Haberstroh. Going to let you hear from Coach Witt, addressed the media earlier today. Then Diego Luna and Josh Furlong stopped by the show as well. Happy Monday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, 3 o'clock hour of the drive on a Monday starts right now. And my heart is full today. It just feels right. Pro basketball is back. The Jazz open up on Wednesday, and it's been a number of months. Several things have transpired, including Dave Matthews Band being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since I last spoke with my guy, Tom Haberstroh. Back on the drive. Tommy, happy Monday, man. How you been?
Been great, man. It's great to be back. And I saw that news about Dave making the Hall. That is, that warmed my heart and brought me back to the Meadows in the Hartford Meadows back in high school.
There you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate your time. How you been? What'd you do this offseason? Anything? I know you're a busy guy all the time, but anything exciting this offseason?
I went to these islands in the Atlantic Ocean called the Azores.
Huh.
You ever heard of this place?
I have not. I have not. Do tell, please. Do tell.
It's a Portuguese island, like 800 miles off the coast. It's like smack dab in the middle of the ocean. Very, very cool spot. Our friends told us to go, so we went. And I didn't come back with any new Portuguese, words or skills or anything like that. But I had a great time just completely unplugging, and it was great. The girls are 1 year older, and you know what? It's a new season. I'm very excited.
Yes, sir. And, there's not a ton of buzz about the Jazz around here, which is weird when it comes to mid to late October. But we have a new hockey team, and they're playing well, and most people are still in football mode, college or pro. But we'll start with our local team. Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, they did some preseason media. And Zanuck said, look, we tried. I'm paraphrasing. He said, we tried, because Danny uttered the phrase, and I'm sure he regrets, which is we're going to go big game hunting. Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills, not exactly that. And ultimately, Zanuck said, look, we did our best to, make some massive moves, and they weren't out there to be made. So more or less, they run it back with some young players. Vegas, I think, set the over-under at about 28, 29 wins, thereabouts. And unfortunately, if that's the deal, it's probably another scenario where they're just fine all year and then no draft capital to speak of. Crazy things can happen. Atlanta had the 10th odds. They got the first pick. But what are you expecting from our local NBA team here, Tom, the Utah Jazz?
I expect them to be in the basement once again. Cooper flag, Cooper flag, Cooper flag. I think that really is going to be the two words that are going to lead this season because the Jazz lose their first-round pick if it's not top 10. It goes to OKC as part of a deal to get off of Derek Favors' money a few years back. They traded away their 2025 pick, but they keep it if it falls in the top 10. And so here becomes the big dilemma, as we've always talked about on this show. Who are the Utah Jazz? It really is this kind of identity crisis that really solidified itself even more, like a vice grip on the franchise, the fact that they extended Lauri Markkanen and basically took him off trade talks until next year. He is trade ineligible for the next 6 months, which means that he is no longer eligible to be traded ahead of the trade deadline this year. So you take him off the table, it really creates a weird incentive for them. On one hand, the Utah Jazz should try to win as many games as possible because they just locked up one of the best spacing bigs in the NBA in Lauri Markkanen, an all-star and a guy who, at his best, he can be the third, fourth best player on a championship contending team. But who are the other stars? There is really no one on this roster that you can point to and say, yep, they're going to win. They're going to hit the over on that 29 wins or whatever it is at DraftKings or BetMGM. And I just think that they're going to be very, very what's the word here? Preventative when it comes to Markkanen's injuries. I think they're going to try to make sure that they do not lose that 2025 pick and end up with something like 31 wins or 40 wins. That would be a worst case scenario for them. And so I suspect that this Utah Jazz team is going to be in the Cooper flag sweepstakes, and their roster demands it. Markkanen is the only one on this roster that I can point to that is a bona fide guy you have to build around, or at least has shown enough that he has all-star capability. So that's where I suspect is that they will be the under on that over-under from Vegas, and I suspect it will be far under.
All right, so I'm not going to go down the list entirely, but Cat changes teams, Julius Randle changes teams, Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, we could go down the list. We could talk about DeMar DeRozan, Harrison Barnes, Klay Thompson, Paul George, Mikal Bridges, DeJounte Murray. Players were available. Moves were there to be had. So when Zanuck says we tried and couldn't get it done, what does that say to you? Is that just like there was nothing on the table that would make us sacrifice our assets and young players that made sense? Like, moves were out there to be made. The Jazz did not make them. When Zanuck says we tried and failed, what does that say to you?
Maybe the asking price was too high on Markkanen. I think it was the thing is, Golden State just extended Moses Moody for 3 years, $39 million. So you average that out to about $13 million. Obviously, the market wasn't super strong for Moody. He's had an excellent preseason, but Danny Ainge didn't bite. Obviously, this is we don't know the exact particulars of what was offered for Markkanen or who they were trying to go after in free agency, but obviously it all fell. It all fell flat. And I don't say this is like a terrible outcome because I think it is important for fans to have someone to root for, and Markkanen is that guy. But, you look at the Atlanta Hawks over the last couple of years, and they had Trae Young, but they just were spinning in their wheels, and they lucked into the number one pick. Maybe that's the roadmap. But, you can't bet on a 1% lottery hitting. You can't. So the Utah Jazz do look like they're headed for, something like the 6th, 7th, 8th worst record in the league. And I wish there was something more exciting for this franchise. They went big game hunting, I guess, but it really was, to me, the worst of both worlds. You kind of hamstrung the franchise by extending Lauri Markkanen, but you also don't get to really tank because he's that good. I think he's good enough that if he's playing 80 games in the season, it's going to be really hard for you to lose as many games as you need to keep that pick in 2025. So it was a disappointing offseason, to say the least.
So follow up about the pick. I believe it was the Raptors who had the same situation, with the pick potentially being surrendered. I think it was the Pirtle trade. And they went about their business to make sure that pick conveyed. The Jazz went about their business to keep their pick a year ago, and now they're in the same situation this season. What are your thoughts on that decision that was clearly intentional?
Yeah, I think when you look at where this franchise is going, it's got to be prioritizing the draft picks. And I would expect John Collins. I would expect Colin Sexton. Walker Kessler was floated apparently to the New York Knicks, or at least the Knicks were looking at Walker Kessler, I should say, and nothing really came to fruition. And so if I'm the Utah Jazz, unfortunately, I think for Will Hardy, it's going to be bare bones halfway through the season. I suspect that they are going to tank and they are going to figure out a way to maximize their chances that they keep this pick. And again, it's just very confusing. I can understand a lot of apathy from the fan base that want a certain direction, and they haven't had that direction. It is very confusing for the fans to look at this roster and say, what are we? I did the broadcast for the Blazers on Friday night, and Utah played about as bad as a game as I've seen in a long time. It was rough. It was really rough. It seemed like they turned over the ball every single time down the floor. There was no ball movement. It was a mess, but there have been some, strong moments in this preseason, and it just seems like they're stuck in purgatory where they could have nights like Friday, and then other times, if Markkanen's got it going, they look like they're a playoff team, and that's just what it's going to be going forward for this Utah Jazz team is just a bit of an identity crisis of who they are, what they want to be, and hopefully Keontae George and the rest of the young guys, they can hit. But it's going to be a year before you see real returns on those young guys because almost nobody is good enough to impact winning in a positive direction in their rookie season. And I love Cody Williams, and I'm I guess a fan of Keontae George at this point. But I got to say, I don't think that those two guys
We will get a press release, an email from Jazz PR that Larry has another sore shoulder where they incrementally sit him and maybe some others throughout the course of the season to maintain draft capital. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to ask your head coach to do it. And Will Hardy's in a position where he certainly wants to win because all those coaches do. Are we going to see sneaky load management? Or do you think they're just going to try to maximize what they have and try to win every game every single night?
Yeah, I suspect you're going to, like I said, very preventative resting or preventative injury prevention there, where you have a guy who is a little banged up, and on a tanking team, you might see him get shelved for half the season. And look, you saw the San Antonio Spurs completely just throw wins and losses out the window by taking Jeremy Sohan, who it was said that he was going to be like Dennis Rodman for them. Try him at point guard. And it really completely tanked their season for like 30, 40 games where you were wondering, like, what are they doing? Like Pop was employing an experiment in real time with a guy, Victor Wembanyama, who I think is possibly the greatest prospect ever. And so I think the shenanigans are going to be up. I think you're going to see Markkanen. He played only 55 games last year. And in the 27 games, I think they won 6 of them. So you're looking at 6-21 without Markkanen last year. I think you're going to see similar this year. Is if he sits, and I think it's going to be quite a bit considering the long-term plans. I think it could be a sneaky strategic move that you can hide behind the idea of we're just making sure he's healthy long-term. We don't want anything. We have him 40 years. Over the next 4 years, $240 million. We got to make sure that we take care of him. And so all disguised as a way to make sure that they have a chance at Cooper Flag.
One more Jazz question, unless you want to talk about who's the second string small forwards, Svi Mikhailachuk or Johnny Juzang. Let's move over to Walker Kessler. Walker just had his 4th-year option picked up, which mostly happens. I mean, Fredette, the Fredette Sacramento King thing where he didn't have his 4th year picked up, that's a rare situation when a team does the calculation on a first-round pick and decides that they're done. But this is kind of a big year for him. We did not see the year 1 to year 2 jump. Most, if not all of his numbers were down outside of blocks, which is his superpower. What do you think Jazz fans should hope to see as far as growth year 3 for Walker Kessler, who so far has been in the starting lineup in the preseason, not John Collins?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy here because every time he plays the Blazers, he gets dunked on. It's just, the other night he got a couple posters, and I was calling the third quarter because of a technical difficulty on our broadcast, and it just seemed like, man, Walker Kessler just has not taken the strides that you would hope for a guy who was on Team USA and predicted to be one of the best young bigs in the NBA. And it really does seem like he hasn't developed in a way that you would have thought, given his background, given the fact that he is from NBA blood, that he would be able to take some steps forward here. But he does seem like he doesn't have the trust of either the organization or Will Hardy in terms of starting next to Markkanen. And you would think that 1-2 punch would be one of the premier young or young-ish front lines in the NBA, and they broke it up for much of last season. And I think that's telling, is if Will Hardy doesn't have the faith that they're going to get the most out of the team with Kessler next to Markkanen or maximizing those minutes, that's going to raise some eyebrows across the league. And I know the Knicks were tied to Walker Kessler and rumored to be in on the Walker Kessler sweepstakes. I think, they big time upgraded with Karl Anthony Towns. You can argue about the contract, but I can understand why the New York Knicks went actually big game hunting and got Karl Anthony Towns rather than decide, all right, let's just roll the dice on Walker Kessler. I think this is a case of I wouldn't say a contract year, but I would like to see Walker Kessler strengthen, beefing up, and try to be a little bit more than just a rim protector that can get a few blocks. He needs to actually wall off that paint and be able to be a vertical spacing threat, meaning As you saw with Rudy Gobert in the prime years of Utah, he was always a threat to catch an alley-oop, catch a lob. And that does really impact the offense in ways that you get the same kind of benefit of having a great three-point shooter, is if the defense has to suck in and basically crowd the paint because they're worried about a Walker Kessler lob or a Walker Kessler dunk on the other end, they will get more space for other guys to operate, like Colin Sexton and Keontae George. It's just whether teams really see Walker Kessler as a threat, and I don't think they see him as that right now.
All right, you referenced the Cat deal. Let's move over to my New York Knicks, who are relevant again for the first time since I was a wee lad back in the 90s. I wasn't that young. I'm kind of old. But I understand, and I always say this, like, I'm a get the talent guy and figure it out, like, no matter what. And I understand why you do it, and probably a lot of it is with Boston in mind. Of course, you bring in Mikal Bridges. Mitchell Robinson's going to be out until like January. Isaiah Hartenstein goes to OKC. Unfortunately, he's hurt. Cat does not guard, and, Tom Thibodeau wants his players to guard, but Tom had him in Minnesota. The pick and roll between he and Jalen will be very effective, and they have great wing defenders. They're not all that big. I'm concerned a little bit about their rebounding ability. But like I said, I understand the risk. Do you think it works out for New York, and what do you make of the Minnesota side of it?
I like the deal for New York. I don't love it. You cited all the reasons why I'm a little reluctant to go to the love it category. I feel like Karl Anthony Towns has a chance to be this year's, or I guess the Chris Bosh of the Miami Heat. Like, I think that is the vision. He's not going to be a defensive player of the year, but can he be good enough in the pick and roll and smart enough out on the floor for a championship contending team to just be top 10 defensively? You don't have to be the number one team, but the Miami Heat, if I had told you that the Miami Heat with Chris Bosh at the 5 would be a top 5 defensive outfit, you would have thought I was crazy based on his Toronto Raptors years. So I think the ceiling is that. Do I think it's going to happen overnight? No. And the reason why is because it's going to take a little bit for Karl to, just in the same way that Chris Bosh did, to feel the music, feel the noise, and hear, the calls for him to man up or whatever it is and get better defensively. I think it's going to take maybe a year for him to realize, all right, this is what I got to dedicate my energy to. It's defending at a high level and hitting shots on the other end of the floor. And it took Chris Bosh and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade a year of, that Dallas Mavericks series in the finals to really, do some soul searching. And I think in the long run, the Knicks were smart to make this deal. It's a lot of money. But as you know, CAA has a lot of influence in the ties between Leon Rose and Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson and Rick Brunson, OG Anunoby, also a CAA client. They were always going to try to go after him and maybe possibly down the road Devin Booker. But, this is not just a team that wants to contend for championships. They're also a team that decided, hey, we don't think Julius Randle's a part of that vision. And I get that. I'm not a huge Julius Randle guy. I got to say, when he got hurt last year, I thought in the end it might be a Ewing theory test for them, is that maybe you increase the roles for OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson, and maybe it's actually an addition by subtraction, and it turned out to be that way. However, they did play pretty well with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle last year, but I can understand, the spacing could be cramped in the postseason, and the decision-making by Julius Randle might not be amazing all the time. But I think the Minnesota Timberwolves, if you're looking at the pocketbook of the ownership, it's a win, a huge win. But fans aren't doing that. Fans aren't rooting. Minnesota Timberwolves may have gotten a little bit better in this trade, may have. There's a chance that it happens. But I think the real answer is Julius Randle comes off the bench with Dante DiVincenzo, and you insert Naz Reid into the starting lineup. I think that is the way that you maximize this trade. If they do that, I do like it. See if Julius Randle is willing to take that back seat. He probably won't be given he's going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. But I do think that they can win this trade if Naz Reid takes the leap and gets into that starting lineup and creates the spacing. Otherwise, I just think Anthony Edwards is going to see a wall of defenders because he doesn't have enough spacing in that starting lineup.
Speaking of CAA, since you and I last spoke, a collective eye roll when Donovan re-signed in Cleveland, as he talked about how much he loves it there and how dedicated he is to staying there. There was no option for him, yes? I mean, the Knicks don't want him. He doesn't fit with their plans. And next to Jalen, probably didn't have the money to throw at him. And Brooklyn's rebuilding. I mean, Donovan back to Cleveland is simply that was the only option for him. Yes?
Yeah, from what I can tell, yeah. And you know what? Like the Cleveland Cavaliers have a new coach in Kenny Atkinson, and maybe they can switch things up and get better results. I mean, the sum of the parts is way better than the whole at this point when it comes to postseason play. Is that you look at the names on that team and the All-Stars and the fact that they have on paper, one of the best backcourts in the NBA, and they just haven't been able to parlay that into postseason success in the same way that the Indiana Pacers went to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that Donovan Mitchell did not work as a fit with Jalen Brunson for the same reasons that I think, Julius Randle was not a great fit next to Jalen Brunson. He needs the ball in his hands to succeed, and he's not much of a defender. And so I think coming back to Cleveland was the best option. And you know what, for Cleveland, like Donovan Mitchell is about as good as it gets, like he is a star in today's NBA, and they'd like to keep him in town. But you know what, this is going to be a big season for them to figure out if Evan Mobley is going to make the leap or if they need to move off of Jarrett Allen. There's a lot of things that could happen in Cleveland, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you're going to hear Donovan Mitchell either be upset about the direction of the franchise, even though that he's committed long-term. We see it time and time again in today's NBA. You sign an extension, and then you make your move. And you see it a lot in the NBA where even though you sign, you can still make grumbles about it and then try to force your way out of there. And someone like Donovan Mitchell, he wasn't a public enemy in Utah, but I do think if Cleveland does not do well in the early going, the vultures will be circling there in Cleveland.
All right, Tom, before I set you loose, you were spot on about Wembanyama. We've had you on for 5 years now. We celebrated our 5-year anniversary this last spring, and we talked to you quite a bit the year before Wembanyama entered the draft, and everything you said about him has been spot on. I'm going to ask you the same and probably revisit this all year because I believe, as you know, the Jazz should go all in on having the best chance possible at drafting Cooper Flagg. Do I sound like a broken record? Yes, because I said the same thing all year when the Spurs were doing it right and the Jazz were doing it wrong. I said, watch what San Antonio's doing. Yes, you need a little luck. We know the deal. They get Wembanyama, and I really, really hope the Jazz have done their calculations to make sure they have the best chance possible with this kid. So tell our listeners what you know about Cooper Flagg and the kind of pro you think he's going to be before I set you loose.
Well, Cooper Flagg is a 6'9", 210-pound defensive monster. People like to compare him to Kevin Garnett or someone who has that kind of defensive and offensive upside. He's an incredible athlete, works extremely hard defensively, great shot blocker, and is about all the right things that you want to see. He's really young. He's still 18 years old at Duke. He's going to be, in basically an NBA factory there at Duke. But I would say it's not just about him. From what I gather, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper over at Rutgers, these wing guys are outstanding prospects in their own right. And so it isn't just about whether they get, Victor Wembanyama or whether they get Cooper Flagg. It's give yourself a chance. Ace Bailey is, could be in 6 months, we're going to be talking about him as like hey, if you get Greg Oden, great. If you get Kevin Durant, great. It could be one of those situations. So I wouldn't even say it's only about Cooper Flagg. I think he is a standalone, the best prospect. But I do think that if you get the 12th best guy in the draft, but you win 40 games long term, unfortunately, the incentive structure is you got to go for the Ace Bailey and Cooper Flagg types in order to turn your franchise around.
Tom, thanks for the time, man. Remind our listeners where they can go get your work.
I'm going to be on the Portland Trailblazer broadcast again this year, also writing at Yahoo Sports, where I did pick Victor Wembanyama as the MVP this season. It's a spicy take, and you can look over there at Yahoo Sports to go figure out why I picked Victor so soon to be MVP. I also have the Substack, TomTheFinder.com, so go check that out for a lot more of this fun research stuff that I like to do in this wacky brain of mine. So, yeah, Yahoo Sports, TomTheFinder.com, and the Portland Trailblazer broadcast.
Great to have you back, Tom. Have a great week. We'll chat soon, all right?
All right. Thanks, Spence.
Tom Haberstroh joins us NBA Daily Assist style every single week, and he told you where you can get all of his great work, so go check it out. All right, coming up next, as we are wont to do on the Monday of every college football season, Coach Witt from earlier today. We're going to bring that back around. Diego Luna stops by, so does Josh Furlong. But before we catch a break, my son rolled into town this weekend. He's living back in New York, doing some work, and so I don't get to see him as much as I used to. Enjoy the riot, guys. You're going to blink, and your children are going to be out of the house. When he walked into the house, I hadn't seen him in a while. He said, "You look like you did when you were 30 years old." And I'm very much not close to 30, but I have been working hard to try to get back in shape. And the process has been expedited and improved as a result of some things I've been doing with Lifestyle Men's Health and Dr. Angela Peterson. Namely, for me, it's been testosterone therapy and vitality peptides. The combination of those two things have made a massive difference. So definitely check them out. Let's bring in Ken now. Ken, what's been your experience at Lifestyle Men's Health?
Well, first of all, Spence, I want to thank you for your endorsement because, man, our phones have been ringing off the hook. And it changes people's lives. It's changed my life, my mid-60s. So if you're out there and you're feeling sluggish, you don't have that desire anymore, well, that can come back. But we need help having that come back, through testosterone treatments, through peptides. Like you said, Spence, my skin, my body structure. How would you like to have your body change in the next 90 days? What's that worth to you? So that's what we can help with.
And what is for real, the best offer you guys have brought us so far? What's that offer today?
So, of course, anyone who does the ED treatments that we do through the stem cell therapy will cut that half off. We've done that before. We're still continuing doing that. But I'm adding on 3 months of free testosterone with anybody who does the ED treatments.
That's a massive, massive offer. Guys, take advantage of it and call him today. Here's the number. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203, 385-458-9203, or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it.
All right, coming up on the other side, we're going to let you hear from Coach Witt. Kyle Whittingham addressed the media earlier today. Of course, big news, Andy Ludwig has stepped down. We are going to bring in Josh Furlong later for more Utah conversation. Diego Luna stops by as well. It's a drive on a Monday, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Friend of the show, Brett McMurphy, has updated his bowl projections for the Action Network, and he has BYU in the CFP along with Iowa State. Two Big 12 teams in the CFP. He has BYU playing Penn State in the first round at State College. He has Utah. Excuse me. He has Utah in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana, December the 28th against Oregon State. Go ahead and sit that one out.
Shreveport? Come on.
How far away? No, I'm not even going to do it. Not even going to do it. The more intriguing possibility is if you're an Oregon State fan, kicked out of the Pac-12, essentially disintegrating, although it has been essentially reinvented in a different way. I would imagine Oregon State, Wazoo would love a shot to play an old Pac-12 pal, I think.
Oh yeah. That would be storylines central in that regard. But all the BYU fans that I talked to had the time of their life in Shreveport. I don't know what you're talking about.
You talked to BYU fans that enjoyed Shreveport. I have not. Maybe I need to kick the tires with my community because I know a lot of Y fans, man.
I know you don't chat with people much.
The difference between you and me is I'm all about the people in real life, and you want to interact with the people on social media.
Oh, okay.
I just have no interest in those people.
That's fair.
It's, as I say often, the internet, where cowards go to feel brave. I don't give a rip about what's happening on Twitter. I don't look at it. I want to talk to real, actual people who don't live online. That's my goal.
I just want to go to Shreveport.
I think we could probably make that happen.
We'll see.
Yeah. You just play your cards right, young man. So there's the latest bowl projections, according to Brett McMurphy. All right, as we are wont to do every Monday throughout the college football season, we let you hear from the head coach of the Utes. Here he is, Coach Witt.
As I'm sure you've probably heard, we've had a change on the coaching staff. Andy Ludwig, of his own volition, has decided to step down as the offensive coordinator. Can't say enough good things about Andy as far as our relationship, what he's meant to this program. We go way back, 30-plus years. Me and Andy go back and consider him a close friend. Tremendous offensive coordinator. Won a bunch of games together, championships together, and he will be missed. He's the consummate professional, and again, a great person and an outstanding football coach, and has had a very storied career. And we wish him the best in whatever future endeavors he undertakes. That being said, Mike Bajakian will be the interim offensive coordinator through the rest of the season. After the season, we'll evaluate where we are and press forward beyond that, depending on again what the circumstances are. Didn't play well Saturday night, obviously. As a team, defensively, we did some really good things. I thought, holding that offense to 13 points was outstanding. Played well on third down. Red zone defense was in particularly tough. I mean, they were outstanding in the red zone. 1 for 5. We allowed 1 touchdown. I think it was a blocked field goal, a couple field goals, and a turnover. And so that was what really kept us in the game, was the red zone defense and their performance there. Couldn't get much going on offense, and as bad as it was, at the end of the game, we had a chance to win. And we were right there at the end with a couple opportunities, a couple possessions to take the lead late in the fourth. Couldn't get it done, and so we came up short. Give TCU credit. They played well defensively, maybe their best game on defense of the year. And so that's where we're at. We got Houston coming up, got to go on the road. And it'll be a 6 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. And, when you win, lose, or draw, well, I guess you can't draw anymore, but win or lose, you come in Monday and you've got to go back to work and get back after it and get ready for the next opponent. So that's where we're at. Questions?
Justin,
Do we want Justin first? Let's get Justin going. It didn't work last week to change up the...
I'm the designated asker, so maybe that'll change.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Justin's question is, with Coach Ludwig stepping down, are you concerned with the degeneration of offensive terminology with QB1 as the interim OC taking over? Have you ever faced this problem before in your 30-year career?
I don't think we've, to my recollection, replaced a coordinator during season. I think one year we changed play callers. But Mike is very well versed in our offensive scheme. Obviously, he's been with us for several months. He's got an excellent pedigree, great resume as far as coordinator experience. Tennessee, Cincinnati, Boston College. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Stint in the NFL, not as a coordinator, but as the quarterback coach at Tampa Bay. And so he comes with a strong resume and has been a play caller a lot of years. And so he was the circumstances and the situation we're in, the obvious choice to finish out the season with. And then again, we'll reevaluate at the end and decide what direction we're going to go.
Kyle, what was the conversation after the game with Andy in terms of just his future with the program, and how did he reach that decision and approach you about it afterwards?
Well, we didn't talk after the game. We talked on Sunday, yesterday. And so Andy just felt it was time for the offense to hear a new voice, have new leadership. He was really at a loss for why we were in the situation we're in. I mean, he's a guy that is as detailed as they get, and he really just had no solution to where we're at, and felt like again that maybe a new direction or at least a new leader at that position would maybe provide a spark.
How much confidence do you have that Mike Kajikian does have that solution and can get this offense back on track?
Confident. He's a very dynamic personality. He's got a lot of energy. He's upbeat, and I think that the players will respond. That's the hope. Yep.
So Kyle, Andy wasn't pushed or pressured?
Andy stepped down on his own volition. Exactly what I said. Yeah.
Well, obviously, mid-season, you probably can't change up a ton of stuff. Where do you expect to see some changes with Mike in the offensive play calling, or kind of what should we be looking for and what you think?
Well, we'll tell you, it just happened yesterday, and so we'll see through conversation with Mike and see how the game planning goes in the next day or two, and there'll be some new wrinkles. There's not going to be wholesale change, I can tell you that. Mike has coordinated with the spread offense in the past, and so he's experienced and really on the same page as what we were already doing here. So it's not a complete new thing for him.
Obviously, like you said, Mike has had experience being an offensive coordinator in the past, but you've also had portions of your tenure where you've had co-offensive coordinators. Will that be sort of a situation with this?
No, absolutely not. Mike has complete autonomy and is the play caller as well as the O coordinator title, and it will be his show.
Yeah, to kind of follow up on that, Rose was warming up on the sideline at points during Saturday night's game. Was there any consideration to bench Isaac at any point during that game?
Well, you're always looking for a spark when you're in the situation that we were in. And then Isaac hit that big pass to Money Parks, and we got the touchdown there. So there was no real, if this, then that. If this doesn't happen, or if that does happen, then we're going to make a move. It was just get him ready because we hadn't been able to generate much offense at all at that point.
Mike is often the first person that Isaac talks to when he comes off the field. How will that relationship help him as an offensive coordinator?
Well, Mike has been the quarterback coach all season long. When they changed the rule, it allows for your analysts and whoever else really within a certain extent to become coaching and on the field as well as in the meeting room. So Andy was more of a NFL model, which a lot of teams are going to that, where the coordinators don't have a position of their own. They just oversee everything, and that was the way we were structured this year. So no change at all for the quarterbacks and who they've been hearing, and the meeting structure and that type of thing.
After the game, I don't know if you heard, but Isaac apologized to the defense. What does that say about his ownership and leadership as a true freshman?
It says a lot, and I wasn't aware of that until you just said that. So that's a stand-up thing to do, and Isaac is a tough kid. He's confident. He's a guy that has leadership qualities that you look for in a quarterback, and so it doesn't surprise me that he said that, but I see that as a positive.
When you look at the passing game and the rhythm of the passing game, is the ball coming out on time? Are the reads there? Is it a little disconnected? How would you describe it?
It's not always coming out on time. You'd like to get it out of your hand, sooner rather than later, and I think everyone in the country, strives for that same thing. We didn't play as well up front as we had in previous games, and protection broke down too many times. I think it was 4 sacks officially, and maybe a couple more where he just barely gained a little bit of yardage, which doesn't go down as a sack, and some hurries as well that he had to get rid of the ball. But you're always trying to get the throw game in sync and timed up, and the timing and the route structures, and we were still not good enough completion percentage-wise. I think we were 52 or 3% in that game, which is about where we've been for the season with Isaac, and so that's a work in progress and something that we need to continue to focus on.
In the search for a second running back, Jalen Glover's role has diminished versus the last 2 seasons. What's happened there, and might that change?
Mike Mitchell has just outperformed him in practice as of late, and without a doubt, Mekhi Bernard is RB1 and will not leave the game unless he needs to take a break, which we've talked about his workload, and I think we were, probably didn't lean on Mekhi as much as we should have in that last game, but Jalen Glover's he's with the travel squad. He's working hard, and we'll see if he gets opportunities. It'll be based on performance in practice, whether that happens or not.
Coach, what have you?
Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes in the run game, someone going the wrong way in the run block schemes. Route structure sometimes not as clean as it needs to be, and so I'm not going to sit here and say it's pinned to this one exact thing, because there's just improvement that needs to take place across the board with that.
Kyle, kind of jumping off that a little bit. On Saturday, you said the next 48 hours there's going to be a lot of introspection, kind of looking at the program. Outside of Andy leaving, are there any other changes, maybe in how you're doing things, or personnel, or different things that you're hoping to get out for the next week?
Well, we're playing really good on defense, and so it's not like we have a team-wide problem going on right now. We just need to get some things generated offensively, and the first 4 games of the season we weren't real prolific, but we were pretty good generating offense and doing what we needed to do. But ever since Cam slid into that Gatorade cart, whatever, it's been a struggle, and so that's us as coaches got to figure out how to break out of it. We still got 5 games left, obviously, and so there's a lot of football in front of us. But right now, we're still searching for those answers offensively.
After the game, you mentioned that the team needs to stick together. In terms of the 3-game losing streak, has there been any fracturing, I guess, of the locker room in terms of mentality, focus? And if there is, how are you, as a coach, trying to correct that if it is happening?
Absolutely none of that to my, from what I've observed. We talked to the team, and it's been a conversation in other years as well, and can't detect any sort of division, divisiveness, none of that going on. We've got a lot of high character players in that locker room, and I would be very surprised if that crept in, and you address it, because obviously it's a natural thing to possibly happen in the circumstances that we're in, but so far all positive, and the mentality is, hey, if we score 7 points, then we better allow 6 or less. That's how it is, and that's the mentality you have to have, because once you start thinking that one side of the ball's got all the answers, then that's when you really have problems.
When you have an entrenched starter, that quarterback like Cameron's going into the season, how hard is it to get a grad transfer to come?
Hard, really hard. And so it's because the grad transfers are transferring for a reason, because they don't see daylight at where they're at, and they want to get into a spot where they can play right away. And that's the primary reason people transfer, is to get to a place that they're going to get to play sooner. And so when you do have, as you said, an entrenched starter and a guy that's one of the elite quarterbacks in the country, you're not going to get now. And it's a little bit relative. If you're a younger kid, but typically a younger guy's not proven yet. So I don't know what how we define that, but you're not going to get a guy like Cam Ward or whatever to come to a place that has an established starter that's one of the elite quarterbacks.
Coach, how did the players receive the news last night?
Well, we did it via text. That's their day off on Sunday, and so we made sure that we sent out a team-wide text so they knew prior to anyone else knowing and could digest it. And so I'm sure there's some players who maybe didn't look at their phones and heard it, through other channels. But we have a team meeting set for today, as we do every Monday, and we'll talk about it during that team meeting.
Kyle, you've had a lot of offensive coordinator turnover in your career, and Ludwig was sort of the guy that stuck the longest, at least from what I know.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. What do you feel like, I guess, in that position, in terms of just the stability? I mean, when you look back on your career, what has went wrong in that specific position, and why has there been so many?
Well, we had a run there where we just weren't productive enough offensively and trying to get it right. In a 20-year career, when you got a guy that was your coordinator for 10 years, I mean, we did have some instability there for portions, but I don't think it's that uncommon. I mean, you see coordinators changing all the time, and it was just a matter of, my obligation as the head coach is to get things right. And if it's not what I think it should be, then my obligation is to make a change. And so those changes weren't always easy, but Andy was certainly a great fit for a lot of years. But again, just felt that he just felt that it was time for a new voice to be heard.
You got Karene back on the defense on Saturday. How did having his presence back on the field impact this defense?
That was big, and unfortunately we didn't have Junior, our other captain. I don't know if we've had all our captains on the field at any time this season, but having Karene back, he's a team leader. He is right in the middle of that defense there as the middle linebacker. Tremendous player. Even though he's not still quite 100%, he was good enough that he wanted to go and performed very well, graded out very well. And it was a big plus having him out there, to answer your question. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Coach Witt, if you missed any of it, it's always up on our website every Monday. It's ESPN700sports.com. Diego Luna is going to join us coming up next, one of the stars from RSL. Let's bring in my guy, Jeff, from Farmer and Chemist. Jeff, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
Happy Monday. Great. How are you?
I'm well. Appreciate the time. So ever since we met with you guys and you helped me out with some gummies for sleep, I've been sleeping so much better. And I say this every time you hop on. Let's get you off those sleep meds that can be addictive and leave you feeling hungover in the morning. How can you help our listeners maybe get some better rest?
Yeah, it's really about following the science. And so there's a cannabinoid called CBN, and we combine that with CBD, and that combination is really, really good for sleep. And it also is effective for treating anxiety. And you're right, it doesn't have a lot of side effects. You don't have withdrawal, and you don't become dependent on it like you do with other prescription medications. So, but it does have some drug interactions, and so we always recommend people talk to a pharmacist when they're considering using this.
Over the weekend, out playing a little golf, the tennis elbow fired up. I keep the problem solved. I believe that's what you call it. The stuff in my golf bag, and it's just like a CBD rub. I put it on the elbow, and the forearm felt much better. How can you help our listeners that are struggling with some physical pain?
Yeah, that's an amazing product we have, and it is a play on words. It's a salve, so we call it Problem Salved, and it has CBD in it, and CBG, which is a very good anti-inflammatory pain cannabinoid, and then we have a little THC in there as well. And that combination is fantastic. And so you can use it topically, like you said, for tennis elbows or other things. You can also take it systemically if you have things like osteoarthritis or other larger needs. And so, again, it's all about finding the right product and the right dose and using it the right way.
How can our listeners get more information, become a little bit more educated, and what's the special offer you have for them if they get a hold of you?
Yeah. everybody at Farmer and Chemist is pharmacy trained, and so we would love to have people come in, talk to us. We'll be honest and talk about what it works for, what it doesn't work for, find the right dose, find the right route, and just people also need to know that not all CBD is equal. So find a good product, make sure it's tested, and if you come talk to us and make a purchase, and you mentioned ESPN 700, we will take 20% off any order.
Jeff, thank you, sir. Have a great week, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right, Jeff from Farmer and Chemist. All right, as you guys have heard me talk about, my son rolled into town this weekend. He lives out of state now. He's back in New York working his way through the world, and I don't see him as much as I used to. And he came walking to the house, and he said, Dad, you look like you're 30. What's going on with you? Well, I'm not close to 30, I can tell you that. And ultimately, I have been putting in the work, which you have to do, but it makes it easier to be able to put in the work if your testosterone levels are where they need to be. And about a year ago, I met Dr. Peterson from Lifestyle Men's Health. We did a couple of quick tests, and she said you could benefit with some testosterone therapy. And I can't even tell you how awesome the benefit has been. Better sleep, my workouts, that's the main thing, at least in my opinion. If you're dragging yourself to the gym and you're dreading it every day, this will help. Also, Vitality Peptides, been about 4 months. My skin looks better. My hair actually grows faster. It's crazy what you can do with just a little bit of help from a trained practitioner. So that's been my experience. Ken, let's bring you on. What's your experience with Lifestyle Men's Health?
It's a lot like yours, Spence, because I was in the same boat, but about 20 years older than you. Never really been a gym rat, but since I met now my partner, Dr. Angela Peterson, she's literally changed my life. I mean, sometimes I work out twice a day because I like it. But my body is transformed into something that I used to say, I feel like in my early 40s. Well, hell, I didn't feel this good when I was in my 40s. So it doesn't matter how old you are. My point here is that if you're feeling sluggish and you want to change it, we can help you.
And what is the special offer? And listen in, this is the best offer they brought to the table. Ken, what's the offer you have today for the listeners from Lifestyle Men's Health?
Absolutely. This is a great one. We've been promoting the half off of the ED treatments now for a while because of rebranding, but I'm also including people that sign up for that 3 months of the testosterone, and that will change your life.
Today is the day to give them a call. Trust me, this is an unbelievable deal. It'll save you a ton of money. You can try it out and see what you think. You're going to like it, promise. Here's the number. Call right now. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203. Or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome, Spence.
All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Diego Luna is our guest coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Going to grab Josh Furlong from KSL, covers the Utes. In just a minute, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, in the latter part of the 5 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight in time for a little Monday Night Football as the pro football weekend will end tonight. Double dip of pro football tonight. You can hear it after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock. But RSL has clinched a playoff spot. It has clinched the top 3 seed. They moved up on Saturday. Game 1 against Minnesota will be Tuesday, October the 29th at 7 o'clock. Our next guest has been on fire as of late. Scored a goal over the weekend. It's Diego Luna back on the drive. Diego, happy Monday, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm good, buddy. I appreciate the time. So congrats on yet another goal. What would you most attribute your good form to as of now? You've been playing really well as of late.
Yeah, I think it's just finding the right stride at the right time, right? And being in the right mindset mentally, and then making sure your body's on the same tracks.
So you guys are headed into the postseason now, and ultimately it does feel like some of the defensive issues you've run into have more or less been eliminated. You had a couple of clean sheets prior to the 1 goal Vancouver was able to get. We had Pablo on the show last week, and he told us that he's asked you as a group to put in a little bit more work as the collective to make sure that those defensive issues are behind you. Do you guys feel like you have buy-in from everybody to make sure that even if you're an attacking player, you got to track back and play good defense?
Of course, right? That's soccer, playing both sides of the game, and that's what's going to lead us to a championship, and that's what's kept us 5 games unbeaten right now going into playoffs, is that mentality from both the attackers and defenders to play both sides of the game.
Tell me what it's been like to welcome in all these new additions. You've had 5 new players added to the roster during the transfer window, and you had to say goodbye to some really good players, namely Andres Gomez. What's that acclimation period been like for you guys, Diego?
Yeah, it was a big change, right? I think we had a momentum and we had a stride, but that's soccer, right? That's the transfer windows where you lose players, you get players, and then you have to kind of rebuild that chemistry and get everybody back on the same page. And I think it took a little bit of time, but I think, like I said, we're finding it at the right time and heading into the postseason.
So, of course, we all know how proficient and effective Chicho is when he's right. And I thought he was going to smash the club record. I thought he was going to maybe win the Golden Boot. But, Diego, we haven't seen a Chicho goal since July. Why? What do you attribute that to most?
I couldn't really tell you. I think he's been doing what he's needed to do to be in those positions. I think the ball just hasn't, found his foot and been able to, be there for him. I think, that's the game of soccer. When things are not working out for one player or one teammate, then it might work out for the other, and that's why you need a lot of threats on a team, right? And then also I think it could be just he's been better on the defensive side of the ball and everything else. So I think once he finds that next goal, I think it's gonna be a take off from there, because he's put in more work on the defensive side and being as a leader. And I think that's adding on to what we already know he can do. So I think once he gets that first goal, he's going to be flying.
So I was a little bit surprised, Diego, to see you on the right side of the lineup card on Saturday. And it feels like, Pablo's tried out some new formulas and some different things to make sure the group is as connected as possible. Do you like playing out there on the like to play most?
Yeah. I think, I would consider myself a natural 10. So I like to play in the pockets. I like to play in between the lines, and centrally. I like to drift. I like to go wherever the game calls for me. I like to get on the ball and create things. Right. That's what I do. But in this formation, you have to adapt. And playing on the right, it gave me opportunities to go 1v1, and hopefully we look for that more. And then on the left, I get to pinch in more and also float around. So I guess the answer to your question, I prefer to play on the left, as it gives me more freedom to tuck in and to roam. But the position I like to play the most and where I find myself the most dangerous is centrally in being a 10 and roaming around and finding the space.
So tell me about the partnership that you have formulated with Diogo since he landed. You know, obviously a designated player. He comes to the club with a tremendous pedigree internationally, and it is still early. But tell us some of the things that you've noticed in training, and how do you think it's coming along to kind of ingratiate him into what Pablo wants to do?
Yeah, I think he came in strong. I think he had, it's difficult. I can't imagine, right, coming to a new country and a new team and in such a weird, timing where everybody's, in form and stuff like that. So you got to give, a little bit of credit to him for coming in at that time. And then, but he's adapted well. He's a great guy personally. So that made it easy for everybody to get comfortable with him and really connect with him into the team. But yeah, I think he still has another level that he's going to reach, and that's just going to be another thing that brings RSL to another level, is having everybody reaching their peak form, at the right time.
Ask you about a couple of the other new guys. Dominic Marczuk, who looks like Pablo likes to use him, kind of out wide a little bit, where we saw Andres Gomez play, and he's been called to some international duty, so he hasn't been around, I'm sure, as much as Pablo would prefer. But how's that process going, and what type of player is he?
Yeah, Dominic, another great guy that made it very easy to connect with and become a friend with. So that part was taken care of. And then on the other side of the ball, he's a great player, and I think for him to go 1v1 a lot is his strength. And to, just 1v1 and get assists, send crosses in, and I think that's his strength, and that's where we need to find him more on the wing.
Same question about Lachlan Brook, another international young Australian kid brought over here as well. He came on for you in the 86th on Saturday. Tell us about him. What have you learned, and what type of player is he?
Yeah, Lachlan, he's gifted with his left foot, right? So he's got a very nice left foot. And I would say he's similar. He likes to go one-on-one. He likes to drive inwards with the ball centrally. And, he's very skillful with his left foot. He's very technical. So I think he's another, great addition, especially, when we need someone like that to have. And I think that's,
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. We had a point guard here for a number of years named John Stockton, who set an NBA record for assists, and John always talked about how he liked setting his players up as opposed to simply scoring all the time. You do both really well. You have 8 goals, but you also have 12 assists. Do you like scoring goals more, or do you like setting your teammates up more, and why?
I like scoring goals more by far. I like scoring goals. I like, putting the ball in the net. And, whether it's a tap in, whether it's a shot from 30 yards out, whether it's a header, I don't care. I like scoring goals. And I wish I ended with more goals. I don't think 8 was enough. My goal was to reach double digits in the season. But, yeah. And then assists, they're great, right? Like, that's something that, what we need, goals and assists. But, nothing beats scoring goals.
Yeah, I figured as much. And, I can totally understand why. Certainly in soccer, when one goal changes games, when you have the ball at your feet, like on Saturday, even against San Jose, and you're still a little ways out from goal and you've got players making runs, what goes through your mind? And how do you decide when it's time to have a go or time to maybe lay it off and set up a teammate?
Yeah, I think moments like that, my mind's always thinking goal, right? And that's a hard mindset to transition into as where, I grew up, and, you find the path that's open, right? Find the player that has the best chance of scoring. All these things are taught to you. But, in this level and stuff like that, you gotta score goals, man. You gotta, if things are not going well for the team, or you got to find a way, to score goals, even on bad games, on good games, whether that's inside the box, outside the box, getting in the right position for a cross. It's all about that, and then that feeling that you get. You can't really explain it, when you're going to shoot, when you're going to pass. It's that feeling you get when you're when you find that little gap in between, the players, and you get 6 to 12 inches of space, you got to take that shot.
Baseball players often talk about as soon as they make contact with the ball, pros know if they hit a homer. How quickly do you know, Diego, after you have struck the ball, that it's got a shot to go in the back of the net? Is it instantaneous? Do you look up? Like, how quickly do you know you hit a good one?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of it, from shots, I'd say outside the box, it's the feeling. Like, as soon as you hit it, But I think, like the goal on Saturday, or when you're dribbling, or these little things, it's as soon as you look up and the ball, either the first bounce or the first half second, as soon as you look up, then you know. And but I think it's a lot of it's the feeling, like making good contact, like other sports.
So here's a follow-up. Which strike, because the one you put off the crossbar, like, we were all standing and screaming, man, because of the couple of step overs. So which strike was actually a better strike when you actually took the shot? The one that went in, or the one that hit the crossbar?
The one that hit the crossbar. Yeah. I made better contact with that one, and with the follow through, like the speed and how hard I hit it, it was definitely with that one. But I leaned back a little too much on that one, which led the ball to go a little higher than I wanted. But the contact was good, and it would have been an amazing cherry on top.
Did you think it was going in when you struck it?
No, I thought okay. I knew I hit it. I knew I was leaned back, so I thought it was going to go over, but it hit the crossbar.
It looked good, man. What do you have a favorite goal that you've scored this year?
Ooh, this year probably San Jose.
Yeah. What about all time? Like, what about in your career? Do you have one?
Okay. I would probably, San Jose is still up there, because it's in my hometown, right? I was in front of, 150 people, friends and family. And, I think that was pretty cool. And then I'd also say maybe one of the goals I scored in El Paso, there's maybe 2 or 3 that were very special. So that could have been awesome.
That San Jose goal, man, that was something special. That definitely has to be right up there on the list. I wonder, because obviously it's unfortunate that Brian Vera has been suspended and he's going to miss the first playoff game. Did you guys talk to Brian afterwards? Because I would imagine, Diego, he is so bummed out to miss a home playoff game. Have you guys talked to him?
Yeah, I personally haven't talked to him about the situation or things he did, but I think the team has, and the coaching staff has, and it's unfortunate, but things, you get consequences for things, for action. So I think he'll learn from it. He'll come back, stronger, better. He's been training hard. So
All right, who is on the roster right now? Who's the best free kick taker? When that ball's lined up and you guys are debating about who's going to take, because Brian takes a lot of them because he has that cannon left leg. Who's the best free kick taker right now?
I would say probably Diogo. He has a really good technique, or Pablo Ruiz.
Oh yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, he's been hurt. What's because you have to be really good at that too, right? I mean, is that an area that you'd like to improve a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think I am good at free kicks, but I think we have a lot of guys on the team that are also good. So I think it's like
decide that, and how does Pablo completely leave it up to you, or is it predetermined depending on where the kick is taken from?
Yeah, I think it's where the foul is, who's on the field at that time, and who's feeling the confident at that moment.
All right, buddy, before I set you loose, it was an own goal that allowed you guys to get the win on Saturday, and you are in great form, which is good news. But I think there's a feeling that the team still needs to find its form in order to make a deep run. So what do you have to do and hopefully getting the win against Minnesota, because I think you guys are a better side. I think you're going to win that series. But what do you have to do to make sure your form is where it needs to be leading into the rest of the postseason to maybe do something special this year?
Yeah, I think we need everybody to put in the work on both sides of the ball. I think that's the biggest thing for us because we have quality. We know we're going to create chances, and we know we're gonna have opportunities. But making sure that everybody's put in the work on the defensive side is what's going to make the difference. And I think that's what RSL is, right? The workhorse mentality, that's in our DNA, and that's what we need to remember, that what got us there. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor of us, whether making a long run or ending it short, is going to be the defensive work from everyone, all 11-plus guys.
Well, buddy, as you often say, when the ball's at your feet, you like to make magic happen. So keep making that magic happen. Best of luck, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Diego Luna on fire. Wonder goal against San Jose. Another goal against Vancouver. But the best strike he had may have not been the one that went in and went off the crossbar after like 3 step-overs. Soccer term. It was very cool. All right. I want to tell you about my friends at Fika Infusion and Wellness. So here's what I use Fika Infusion and Wellness for. They have hydration shots. They have IVs. It's a matter of minutes, and you feel completely hydrated and energetic. Oftentimes, I'll get up a little bit earlier on a Saturday. If I have a tea time and I need to be hydrated, I'll stop by there on my way up to the golf course. So Fika Infusion and Wellness, there's a lot going on right now. Football, hockey, tailgating, traveling. And if you're wanting to lose weight or get hydrated, you need a boost, and you can get it at Fika Infusion and Wellness. Gave yourself a head start and a little push with Fika Infusion and Wellness. Now, here's the bottom line. They've got a great deal right now. It's an ESPN 700 deal. Just tell them you heard it on my radio show. Say, Spence told me to go try this. You get $100 off your first IV. That's essentially close to a free IV. And that's, again, what I use it for. If you need to lose weight, they've got the semaglutide or the Ozempic or whatever the new fad is. They've got that as well. So, again, mention ESPN 700. You get $100 off your first IV, and it's valid at any Fika Infusion and Wellness location. You can go in once a week, once a month, or once a day, whatever you want. So check it out. The products are FDA approved, including their supplements. Semaglutide, it emits natural hormones, has been proven to help patients lose weight. You've got access to medical experts on site, which is helpful. They walk you through your journey and your schedule. So you should book a consultation today online or visit one of their locations. Mill Creek is the one I use. There's a location in Woods Cross. There's one in Park City as well. And coming soon now to American Fork. More information can be found at www.fikainfusion.com. Fika is spelled F-I-K-A. All right, back to college football coming up next with Josh Furlong. About an hour away from Bill Riley. We'll say goodnight from Monday Night Football at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700. Voice of the Utes, about 1 hour from right now. It's a busy news cycle for Utah football, unexpectedly, certainly, based off preseason expectations, not based off the past few weeks. Our next guest, consistent guest of ours, covers the Utes for our friends over at KSL. Good to have Josh Furlong on a Monday. Josh, happy Monday, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I can't say the same for our local Utah football fans who had a rough weekend, having a rough Monday, and have had a rough month. So your reaction, first of all, let's just start with the big piece of news. And I wondered if there was going to be a change, and there's a big one. Andy Ludwig is out. Mike Bajakian is in. What do you know about our new OC, Mike? And what do you have to say about Andy's decision to step aside?
Yeah, I'll start with Mike. Bajakian likes to run kind of more of an RPO offense, kind of spread it out a little bit, mix it up that way, with a little bit more tempo. So I'm curious to see if, some of that kind of stuff gets introduced into it. I don't expect the playbook to change too much. This is still going to be the playbook that they've got. And I think it's more just kind of how the plays are called and kind of what's going on there. So curious to see how that goes. But, it's anyone's guess. We'll get to talk to him tonight and kind of see his philosophy on what he wants to do and how he's going to utilize this offensive playbook. But really curious there. In terms of Andy Ludwig, it's kind of like this bittersweet moment for Utah, right? Because Andy Ludwig has been credited with, some of the biggest moments in Utah football history, whether that be the 2008 season or the 21 and 22 seasons when Utah gets to the Rose Bowl. And so there's this love for Andy where, he clearly, and when he's in his element and things are going well, there's very few offensive coordinators that can stop or compete with what he's able to do. He just has kind of that chess playing checkers kind of mindset where he just knows the game at a level that very few do. However, in this environment, with the transfer portal and where players are coming in and being introduced much quicker than they've always been, I think it becomes much more of a challenge for him to kind of stay up with times and be able to do that. And the reality is the whole season was schemed towards a Cam Rising type system where you knew you had a quarterback that was going to be able to do everything that you knew. As much as Andy Ludwig understood that offense, Cam Rising understood it just as much. He understood it to the point where they worked hand in hand. The problem was he just didn't get Cam Rising all season. And so you're trying to rely on a freshman quarterback to kind of be in that same mindset and be able to understand what needs to be done, and it's just not going to happen. And so, Andy just didn't really put that offense in a position to succeed. There were several predictable moments where everybody in the stadium, everybody on TV, they're able to understand what Andy's going to do, and that doesn't help, right? Like you're not getting any help. They're not giving Isaac any help. The run game's not getting any help. And there just came a time where, you kind of had to have somebody kind of fall on their sword and leave. And unfortunately, it's for Ludwig, because I truly believe that they felt like he was, this mastermind and brilliant guy that helps. But I just think in this era of college football, you need something that's a little bit easier. You need something that works, gets people excited, and helps the offense. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. This isn't all on Andy. I'll say that. There's a lot of problems, but I think it doesn't help when the play calling is so predictable, and it doesn't help your offense to feel like they have any mojo.
I know that ultimately there's probably no way of knowing whether or not this was 100% Andy's doing or whether or not he was gently encouraged to go find something more constructive to do with his time. I have a hard time believing that when you're making nearly $2 million, you would just bounce, but maybe he did the calculation himself and decided that this was the right thing for both himself and the team. But certainly there has to be some possibility that some conversation came from somewhere else. Ultimately, Coach Witt was asked about it. He addressed it. And until a different piece of information becomes public knowledge, I guess we'll just have to go off the premise that Andy woke up on Sunday and believed he was the problem. I'm not sure I buy it. What about you?
Yeah, this is kind of the thing in sports, right? You can either, go out on your own or we can, fire you and kind of have that out there. I think, it was a combination of the thing. I truly believe that they probably felt like there needed to be a new voice. The thing that I go back to, though, is Kyle Whittingham said at the end of his press conference on Saturday that, the next 24, 48 hours, there were going to be some changes. And, less than 24 hours later, Andy Ludwig steps down. And then when you ask Kyle about it today, he doesn't really specify to any new changes that needed to be done. So, whether this was him kind of trying to spark the engine and trying to get that on the move without saying it himself, that's a subtle way. But I think at the end of the day, it was just kind of this mutual agreement that Andy needed to kind of move on, that you can do it in a dignified way and just say you're going to step down and kind of fall on the sword type thing. But outside of that, what else is going to change, right? Like, I don't think Kyle had presented anything that was going to show that this offense was suddenly going to change unless you change the guy that's calling the plays. And, he says that he's going to have full autonomy. We'll see. Kyle's always kind of had a heavy hand in offensive play calling and wanting to be conservative and wanting to keep things safe, especially with a guy, let's say, like Isaac, who's a freshman, and you want to eliminate turnovers. I don't know that all of a sudden, this offense is going to change because you have a new offensive coordinator. I think it's going to be similar. It's going to be a similar playbook, but you have to get a different voice in there and at least give some sense of hope that things are changing.
So out of 16 teams in the Big 12, Utah is 10th in total offense. They're 10th in passing. They're 9th in rushing. They're 14th in scoring. They're 14th in first downs, 15th in third down conversion. They're 12th fourth down conversion. They're 14th in offensive efficiency. They're 14th in red zone. And they're number 1 in time of possession, which makes no sense at all. So this is one of the worst offenses in the Big 12. And it's not fair to place it all on one dynamic. So if we pan back now and look at this Utah offense from a 30,000-foot view, Josh, what are the issues as you see them right now?
Yeah, talking personnel-wise, I mean, you've got to have better protection on the offensive line. It hasn't been consistent. They were moving guys around last week, trying to get some consistency there. That teams are going to blitz you and get a lot of pressure because Isaac is a freshman, and they're going to try to put a lot of pressure on him. But you've got to be able to get better protection there. You also have to have more than just Mekhi Bernard as your running back, right? Like, I know they've thrown in a couple of guys here and there, but those reps are so few and far between and so sporadic that it really is just a Mekhi Bernard show. Outside of that, you've got to utilize the talent that you have in that wide receiver room. Yes, Dorian Singer is the guy, and you need to get him the ball more, and you got to find ways to get him there. Do whatever you can to get it in his hands. Do the same with Brant Keithy. You can utilize a bunch of different playmaking abilities to be able to help them, but there's just so many more guys than them, right? Like, those guys are going to demand the ball, and they should, but set up other guys to be able to act as decoys if you have to. Try to find other opportunities, and if those guys that are your star guys are get covered up, you've got other options. It just feels like this year, especially the last few weeks, Utah hasn't done any of that. Even with Brant Keithy, they used some motion in the backfield, and that play was so easily picked up by the defense that he didn't even get a yard because it was just this long developing play that has been shown time and time again. There was no creativity. There's just so much that there's not a good vibe about the team, right? I know it's a tough sport, but at the end of the day, you've got to have fun. And these guys have to feel like they've got confidence. They've got to feel like they can have fun. They got to feel like they're not being predictable. And unfortunately for them, all of that stuff hasn't been there. Everything has been predictable. It hasn't been fun. They're trying too hard. And that's honestly the problem. I mean, it's everybody. It's not just one position group or one person. It's just everybody. But a part of that is just has to be the play calling.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. And, some of the fourth down stuff, like I said, among the worst in the conference at both third down and fourth down conversion. Now, Josh, on the other side of it, the defensive stats, they're fine. Okay, for a Utah defense, I think you would want more of them. Close to the top of the conference. They're 9th in sacks. They do not turn the other team over. They're last in forced fumbles, and they're 14th in fumbles recovered. Interceptions as of now, they're 9th. But when you look at the overall defensive efficiency numbers, they're top 5. Scoring defense, top 5. So the stats say the defense is fine, but I think based off of what we were expecting from the defense, not as good as I think we expected and they would prefer. I guess I'll ask you how much of that is health, how much of that is being asked to do too much because you forced a 3 and out. You go get one sip of Gatorade and you turn around, you're like, what? We're back on the field. So there are probably a number of reasons why the defense has been good, not great. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of goes to the point of kind of the legacy that this defense has had over the last, couple decades. Like, they're a team that is generally more flirting with elite or are elite than they are just as kind of this good defense that is able to kind of be at the top of a conference. This, I think that's a good thing. I think it shows where Utah's at, but I think this year, more than anything, injuries have contributed to that. You've got guys behind them in the depth, especially in the secondary and at linebacker, where you've got talent. It's not a matter of depth and talent that way. It's just experience. You don't have a lot of guys with experience. They're not playing sound football, and the communication hasn't been there. I think losing Karene Reed, and you and I have talked about this a ton, losing Karene Reed for a long time really was the difference maker. You don't have him out on the field, and you lose the most vital aspect of that defense and communication. And so a lot of those different things where, Arizona State or Arizona, you lose contain and you're not getting to where you need to be. I mean, the way that this team started, and I understand it was Southern Utah and Baylor and Utah State. I mean, they looked like they were going to make havoc plays. They were getting into the backfield with regularity. But I think, you start thinking too much, and you're starting to worry about putting that pressure on yourself. You're trying to pick up where the last guy left off, and so you start thinking, like, what do I have to do? It just kind of compounds on itself, and so it's tougher for that team to be able to do it. Reality is after you lost, some of these games, that pressure sets in, right? Now we've got to try harder to get the team back. The offense isn't vibing. We've got to do all that we can to help win games, and they're doing it. I mean, you held a team that scores in the 30s at 13 points, and you still lost a game. Like, they're doing their part. It's in some ways unfair to judge them that way, but at the same time, we're used to elite defenses that are doing this phenomenal job. And so when there are missteps and there's problems, I think it shines a little bit more because we're so used to seeing much more elite defense. But I think they're in a good spot. I think they'll be okay.
Number 15 in the conference, kick returns, number 16, punt returns. I mean, Josh, there's a case to be made that they haven't been good on any level, offense, defense, special teams. Like I said, like total defense second, scoring defense second, rushing fourth against the run, and then they're fifth against the pass. Like, the defense is the one area that's been fine, not great, but even the special teams have not been great. Like, from a macro standpoint, as we pan out overall, I guess what I'll ask you today is we sit here 1-3 in conference, 4-3 overall. Most of the metrics indicating this team is near the bottom of the list on the measurable metrics. What surprises you the most about just how wrong everybody was and has been about this Utah team? I've been wrong every week, man, like every single week.
Ooh, that's a tough question because I think, that's the nature of projections, right? Is we look at people on paper. We're looking at their production in past years or what their potential could be. It's why, there's a lot of people that are listed as 5-star players and then they come into the league and then they don't have the work ethic to be able to be that kind of a player. I think that's what makes projections hard. Now, at the end of the day, I still think Utah has the talent to be where those projections were, right? Like, I don't think we were sitting here talking about Utah in the way that we did at the beginning of the season as just kind of this blind trust. I think there was a lot to back up for that. And I understand, like, we were putting a lot of pressure on Cam to be able to fulfill that. But I think, some of those projections were related to that. And so I think it becomes a challenge to try to predict a team when, you're putting so much trust on one player. Yes, Utah has improved in almost every facet of the game. We knew that their offense had improved because they had a veteran offensive line coming back. There was a deep running back room. You had a deep wide receiver room, probably the best that it's ever been at Utah. The defense had some questions in the secondary, and I think some of those have proved to be there, but in some respects, those have actually not been the biggest problems. So I think that's the hard part with projections is it's easy to look at these things on paper and say, okay, this is how it's going to be. But I think there's just a general, vibe of a team too, right? Like, it's easy that when you lose one game or you have an injury to your star quarterback, how quickly things can turn. And once you lose, it's so much easier to lose again. So, look, like I said, like, this Utah team is not great, right? Like, I get it. Like, we're sitting here looking at this and saying this is a team that is vastly underperforming what their preseason expectations are, but they have the talent to be there. So I don't know that those preseason projections are wrong. It's just a matter of what happens on the field. And unfortunately, Utah's just not living up to those expectations.
Utah also first in the conference, opponent first down, first in the conference, opponent's third down percentage. There are numbers that indicate the defense is good. How close, Josh, is the defense to being whole as far as the health goes?
Yeah, I think they're much closer. I mean, you get Kenny Reed back this last week. He's still not 100%, but he's in a position where he can actually contribute, right? And he could be on the field. My understanding was Connor O'Toole was pretty close to going on Saturday, so you're probably getting him back. Keanu Fotu, I'm not entirely sure on him. But it sounds like this defense is getting much closer to being at full strength. They've got at least the majority of their guys there. Junior Tafuna was kind of a late scratch. I believe there was something that happened in practice that negated him playing. But I think this defense is really close to being there. But the fact that they're able to continually do that with these injuries shows that they have the talent. It's just a matter of kind of keeping it all together, not letting the rest of the game impact them, because they can be, if not at the high level of good, too close to elite if they can just kind of piece things together. And I think you maybe at the end of the season look at this team a little bit better from the defensive standpoint.
There are a lot of people that would know much better than I would that already believe this is going to be the swan song for Coach Witt. I have zero clue. I know that's a topic that people get uncomfortable about, but do you think the way the season has gone, and according to what a lot of people believe could continue to go, has any bearing on what he decides to do when this year's over?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to. I think you have to look at this and look at a lot of professional athletes or coaches that when it starts to become a job, when it starts to become a chore, they start hanging it up because they don't feel the same passion and joy. I don't know that Kyle isn't experiencing the same joy or passion. I mean, obviously these have been trying seasons, but you're starting to see it wear on him a lot more. You're seeing him wear it on his face a little bit more after these post games during the season. He's still spry and he still has that passion and he's still going to put his all, but you're starting to see it kind of wear on him. I know that there's been conversations had where I think he's talking about it more. He understands that in this age of the transfer portal, and he's embraced it well, so I don't want to say that either, but in this age, it becomes much harder to be able to kind of do what you're doing at the level that he was doing it at. And so when you get that fresh blood in there, you already have your head coach in waiting, and if you truly believe in Morgan Scalley, there's probably not a better time to do it than nowish, just so that you can kind of keep that culture to get intact and together. You're not just kind of writing out something that, at the end of the day, you're going to look back and say, I should have retired 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and your legacy is kind of tarnished. I don't think Kyle's legacy is tarnished by any means. I don't even think if Utah lost the rest of their games this year, it'll be tarnished. But I think there comes a point where some people kind of hold on too long. And I think he's starting to get to that point where he realizes, this is not what he needs to do all time. He can go serve in his advisory role and help Morgan kind of acclimate to it. But I think you're much closer to the end than you are, even like a year ago when we were having these conversations.
So what is fair to say about Isaac Wilson, an 18-year-old who enrolled in April and who less than a year ago was trying to throw touchdowns against Skyridge? Let's just remember how green behind the ears this young man is. There are moments where you go, oh, wow, like the Wilson boys can throw a football. Let's make no mistake about that.
I think what's fair to say about him is he's a guy that isn't going to be overshadowed by the moment, right? He's not going to be scared about the situations that he's been in. He's been able to move the ball with ease at times when he's been given much more latitude and flexibility. You saw what he's able to do in that Arizona game. So, and I would argue that Arizona is probably the toughest defense that Utah's played of the last 3 losses that they've had. And so the fact that you can do that shows that there's talent there. I think there also shows some maturity in his approach to the game in the sense of apologizing to the defense after the game. He's trying to gain that respect and doing all the right things. He's got the confidence, and he's at least able to do what he needs to, right? He's got good pocket presence for the most part. Yes, he holds onto the ball too long. There's times where he's not seeing, the guy that's about to sack him, and, he needs to improve that. But I think you have a guy that, as he continues to grow, I don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering that's saying, okay, this is just not the guy. He's doing exactly what most freshmen are going to do. He's going to, like I said, hold on to the ball too long. He's trying to go for the reads that aren't there, try to make up for certain things instead of passing up a quick check down type pass that can get you an easy first down. He wants to be that gamer. And so it's kind of mixing that balance of saying, okay, like you just need to get these yards. You need to get it out fast. You need to do these things and help him. But I think all that's going to come. And I think the nice thing for Utah is they don't really have much more to play for than pride. And so I think you can take more risks. I know people don't want interceptions, but at the same time, let him take some risks. Let him find some opportunities to kind of make some plays and showcase his ability. It's the only way you're going to get him to learn. And if you really want him to be your starting quarterback next year, this is how you're going to do it. And as much as you don't want to make this season kind of the testing ground, you've kind of come to a point where it's the best opportunity for you in the future. Try to get those guys the ball like a Dorian Singer, help them, excel in their NFL potential. But take shots, do things that are going to help you get it on that film so that you can learn so that you're much more advanced next year.
Do you believe that if Utah goes to Houston with Mike Bajakian in for Andy Ludwig and it looks similar or worse, then we ask whether or not Brandon Rose needs a shot under center, or does it just feel like they are riding with the kid no matter what?
I think you have to do your due diligence, right? I think if things just aren't working and they're not clicking and you can look at the game plan and it feels like it's been schemed better and Isaac's still making mistakes, yeah, you have to take that. But at the same vein, like, for what reason, right? Like, outside of Isaac just absolutely stinking it up out on the field, there's no real advantage to taking him out of there. You want him to get the rep. You want him to learn. You can change things to kind of help him. But at the same time, I don't know that you learn anything by putting in Brandon Rose. Maybe you do, right? Maybe you have somebody that comes in. I think they still have to do their due diligence and at least respect that and say that that's an option. But at this point, I think you just kind of have to roll with the punches and just let Isaac learn in real time and do what you can. Yeah, he's thrown, I think it's 8 or 9 interceptions this year, and not all of them are equal. But at the same time, you've got a defense that for the most part that can kind of make up for that. Live with it, have some fun with it, try to find some things, put him in some different pressure situations to help him grow. But if Brandon hasn't gotten at this point, I don't know that he's necessarily a better option.
All right, Josh, before I set you loose, what are you willing to – so here's the deal. You have head-to-head against BYU. You have head-to-head against Colorado. You have head-to-head against Iowa State. 3 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the conference, including the top 2. Now, you have to hope that Iowa State gets got 2 more times. Looking at their schedule, I don't know that they do. And as crazy it is to say, I don't know that BYU gets got 2 other times, even if they lose to Utah. So if we hold on to the last branch before we actually hit the ground, we can look at a path that does still include something special. But what are you willing to say about the possibilities that still lie ahead for this Utah football team?
Personally, I don't think they're there. Yeah, you can find a way to get there. But like you said, BYU's path outside of Utah, you can argue UCF this week, but if you can get past that and go 8-0, Utah's your tallest task, and after that, it's pretty smooth sailing to an undefeated season. This schedule sets up really well for BYU. Iowa State is kind of similar. They might have a different path, but early on, if you would have won last week, you beat TCU, you still had everything in front of you because you had both BYU and Iowa State on your schedule. You could control that. You could do whatever you needed to. But I think pure chaos would have to happen over these next 5 weeks, and I don't foresee that, right? And I don't think that Utah deserves that either. I think you can't sit here and drop some of your easiest games and then expect to be able to be in the mix at the end. At this point, like I said, you're playing for pride. You're playing for guys to be able to set themselves up for the NFL. You're playing for next year. I don't know that that's a bad thing. I think it helps you, and in the long run, it's probably a better situation for you. But I know as a fan, that doesn't make you happy, right? You want something meaningful at the end. At this point, go in and try to beat BYU on your home turf and make that a game worth celebrating. So to me, that's kind of the highlight of the season right now is that BYU game, which It didn't feel like it was going to be that outside of the typical rivalry banter, but I think you're now to that point where this has to be kind of the signature win of the season.
Thanks for the time, bud. Tough Monday for Ute fans. Hopefully better times ahead. Have a good week, all right?
Thanks, you too, man.
All right, Josh Furlong covers the Utes for KSL. Appreciate his time. Before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Diamond Coat Premium Home Siding. They're new here along the Wasatch Front. You won't believe what they can do to your home's exterior. Diamond Coat Siding Next Generation System delivers the exterior transformation you deserve to level up to the neighborhood standard. They're the total design solution that shows your personal style with endless styles and colors for limitless customization. And their 30-year no-fade warranty means your vision will last for decades to come. Design beyond limits, beyond expectations with Diamond Coat, now available in the Salt Lake City area. Premium home siding, limitless potential. They have endless styles and colors. They're your total design solution, and it's year-round weather ready, which, of course, is important to be durable in all seasons here in Utah. Discover more at diamondcoatsiding.com. That's Diamond Coat, spelled Kote, siding.com. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Drive at 5 is next. Then Bill Riley stops by. We'll say goodnight at 6 right here on ESPN 700. What's going on? 5 o'clock hour of the program gets rolling right now on this lovely Monday afternoon. Happy Monday to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Off to a good start to that work week as well. Obviously, your Monday is probably predicated on which local college football team you cheer for. If you're a Ute fan, you might not be having a great Monday. Probably didn't have a great weekend. But all is not lost. Don't forget. Remember, don't forget that Monday Night Football comes your way coming up. When we say goodnight at 6 o'clock, we're going to bring on the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, coming up at about 5:30 to discuss all things Utah football, including a massive piece of news that has broken over the past 24 hours that Andy Ludwig has stepped down and Mike Bajakian is named the interim offensive coordinator. Coach Ludd, according to Coach Witt, has decided to step aside by his own accord. And it certainly has not been a great season on that side of the football that we'll get to in a moment. Of course, Andy Ludwig, it's his second stint at Utah as the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator back from 2005 to 2008. And, of course, consecutive conference championships in 2021, 2022. And certainly should be remembered for all of the great things he did to stabilize a position that for a number of years wasn't very stable, as you fans know. But total offense this year in the Big 12 out of 16 teams. Total offense, Utah's 10th. 10th in passing, 9th in rushing, 14th in scoring, 14th in first downs, 15th in third down conversion, 13th in fourth down conversion, 14th in offensive efficiency, 11th in the red zone conversion. They're actually number one in time of possession, which makes zero sense. But this was a piece of news that broke after potentially one of the saddest nights, certainly in recent memories. Rice-Eccles Stadium has seen a couple of those this year with Arizona rolling into town and beating Utah pretty good. And then TCU coming in with the pedigree of a good offense, but a horrible run defense, was able to stifle Utah's run game by stacking the box. But they were unable to move the football. TCU gets that win 13-7. And now Utah hits the road to take on Arizona. What if I told you preseason that Utah would be a 3-point favorite against Houston, even though it's on the road? I mean, typically the home team gets 3 points, so Vegas is telling you Utah 6 points better than Houston. But Houston beat this TCU team that beat Utah not too long ago. So the conference kind of turned on its head. Coach Witt and the team continues to be committed to Isaac Wilson. Isaac, of course, at 18 years old, was trying to throw touchdowns against Skyridge High School not too long ago, and now he's being asked to do a lot. And so far, you can blame the play calling, you can blame the production. It is broken, and it's broken on a level that I haven't seen in quite some time. It does feel like, for Ute fans that aren't, millennial Ute fans, you guys are spoiled, okay? Go vape. Leave the rest of us alone. Ute fans of a certain age, remember that once upon a time, it was kind of like, well, maybe Utah football can make a bowl game, and maybe they'll beat BYU. And that's kind of like all you could ask for back in the day. It's been a generation of a different type of expectation, and as Ted Lasso taught us, it is the hope that kills you. But we were all expecting big things from Utah football this year. They were expecting big things in themselves. Utah football picked by the media to win the Big 12. Utah football entrenched as the favorite by Vegas to win the Big 12. And it's one thing to be bad. Okay, every program has a down year. Every pro team goes through peaks and valleys, no matter who you are. Even the big brands, right? Even the Patriots, right? I mean, what? 2 decades of dominance, 8 Super Bowls, and now they're one of the worst teams in pro football. These things happen. It's okay to be bad. What I think really stings, though, it's a different thing when you've been picked to win a conference and you might be one of the worst teams in that conference. Like, that's a different thing altogether. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration from Ute fans has kind of manifested this year. Nobody was expecting this at all. And if we come into the season expecting a team to struggle and they struggle, okay, that's the deal. But there's a different layer of frustration when most everybody thought you were going to be one of the best teams in the conference. Now, it's not just Utah football. I mean, there are plenty of teams across the landscape of college football. As I said a little bit earlier, Kalen DeBoer is learning what life is like in Tuscaloosa when you're not Nick Saban. Programs struggle. Most every preseason Big 12 prognosticator had 3 teams atop the conference. It was Utah, it was Oklahoma State, and it was Kansas State. Out of those 3 teams, only K-State has had what is perceived to be a really good year. Oklahoma State hasn't won a league game. They almost won in Provo, but ultimately they go home with another loss. They're 0-4 in league. Utah's 1-4 in league. Utah and Oklahoma State are combined 1-7 in Big 12 games, as we're more than halfway through the season. Like, this conference has been flipped on its head, and I certainly have been wrong about Utah football every single week. Last week, prior to the TCU game, based off of TCU's inability to stop the run, at least going into Saturday, I thought we'd see Mekhi Bernard go for like 150, and Utah control the clock, control the tempo, not ask Isaac to do much, but be able to run the football, and they couldn't. Average 2.6 yards per carry. Mekhi only had 13 carries, and that quarterback to beat them, which he couldn't do. How much of that is on Isaac? How much of that is on Coach Ludd? I don't know. I just think top to bottom, there are very fair questions to ask about Utah football right now. And that means of everybody, by the way. There's nobody that's Teflon. And Kyle knows this. You're the head coach. You're the CEO. The buck stops there. So Coach Ludd falls on the sword. But it's fair to ask questions of the entire operation. Has the athletic department properly acclimated itself to the era of NIL and the transfer portal? It seemed like they had, but the results change everything. This is simply put, period, end of story, regardless of the level, regardless of the sport. This is results-orientated stuff, and it's what have you done for me lately, period. That's unfair at times, and it doesn't do justice to the complete picture of how Andy Ludwig should be remembered as he leaves the University of Utah, or Cameron Rising, as for the second straight year he's done with a season-ending injury. When you pan back from 30,000 feet, there are several very fair things to talk about, and more good than bad with both Cam Rising and Andy Ludwig. Far more good than bad, certainly. But as we sit here today, all we can do is analyze the situation that manifests itself in front of us. And it's not that it just hasn't been good enough. It hasn't been close. It hasn't been close all year. I mean, look, Southern Utah, all right? You just kind of throw that thing out the window. All due respect to Coach Fitzgerald, friend of the show, that was a glorified scrimmage. We thought Dejon Stanley was going to win the Heisman because he was running wheel routes with no defensive players within 10 yards of him. Cameron looked healthy. He looked good. First half of Baylor, Cam looked healthy. He looked good. Then he goes down and everything changes. We know that. But it's time to throw that storyline out the window because, honestly, I'm tired of it. He's not playing this year. And we'll see if he comes back next year, but let's table that topic for now. You have to focus on the hand you've been dealt. You have to focus on what's in front of you. And the results so far have not been good enough. And honestly, they haven't been good enough anywhere. Utah is second to last in the conference in punt return. They're last in the conference in kick return. Cole Becker's been really good. The defensive metrics indicate that this is a good D, not a dominant D. It could be once they get whole and healthy. Total defense, Utah's still second in the conference. They're fourth in run defense. They're fifth in pass defense. They're third in efficiency. They're ninth in sacks, second to last in forced fumbles, last in fumble recoveries. So a lot of defensive metrics are very good. They're very good on first down. They're first in the conference in both first down and then opposing team third down conversion percentage. Best defense in the Big 12. They get healthy. The defense is good enough to potentially allow this team to get back on track if the offense just shows a pulse. And maybe Mike Bajaki and the new offensive coordinator is the guy for that. But only time will tell. And only, the proof that actually manifests on the field is what we're going to operate off of. In the past, kind of a spread option guy. Will he let Isaac just loose a little bit? Will he let Isaac play a little bit more? I don't think Andy ultimately just kept Isaac in a box. I think we saw moments where Isaac had opportunities to try to stretch the field and go downfield, but he's 18 years old, who enrolled in April. It's just tough to ask this kid to make miracles happen when he doesn't have the experience playing college football at this level. It's very rare that a true freshman in college football leads a team to conference championships or something like that, unless you're the unicorn. But even Arch Manning down in Texas, like his family, football royalty, they wanted him to sit and learn behind Quinn Ewers for a few years. didn't play last year. Quinn's had injury issues, so Arch has been forced into action. But even the best quarterbacks in the country, more often than not, sit back and have the opportunity to learn before being thrown into the fire. Isaac certainly did not have that opportunity. He was asked to be ready far too early, in my opinion. What does that say about Brendan Rose? What does that say about Sam Heward? I'm not at practice. I don't know. I do wonder, though, if Utah goes to Houston and lays an egg on offense and it looks the same, do we move away from blaming the play calling and start to talk about the personnel? I mean, I feel horrible for the players. I feel like most of the failures this year, whether it's managing the messaging around Cameron Rising, whether it's play calling, whether it's game prep, I feel like the adults in the room have failed the kids. I really feel that way. And obviously, Coach Witt, if there's someone who is as close to Teflon as possible in this situation, it's Kyle, who has the built-in equity and has the sweat equity, and he's earned the trust of the community. But at what point do we start asking questions about the entire operation? At what point are the results bad enough, and not just wins and losses, the way the game plays out? At what point is the fever pitch loud enough where there's nobody who's beyond reproach as far as it pertains to just simply asking a question as to, are you in the right seat on the bus? Has the game changed? Is it a job that you're even interested in doing anymore? Do we have the right people on the right bus? Only they don't. Only they know that. And up until this year, for the most part, it feels like the answer to that has been unequivocally yes. As of right now, I think you're asking questions all the way around. And it does add a little bit to the sting for Ute fans that the team who's experiencing every single dynamic that we thought would be in play this year for Utah football plays their football just about 40 miles down south. Because BYU, say what you want about the luck factor. Say what you want about who are they between the 20s. Say what you want about maybe fortunate bounces here or there. It doesn't matter. It's 7-0, and it's period, end of story. And a lot like the Chiefs, BYU is winning in a bunch of different ways. And this is no longer, you can't consider it a fluke at this point. Yes, luck is involved with these things. To win championships, you need luck. To win championships, you need luck with health. To win championships, sometimes you want luck shining on your side with lack of help from your opponents. That's part of the deal, man. That's just how this thing works. So you can bark all you want about the luck of BYU. They're the ones who at this point are experiencing the year that we thought Utah football would have up here. Undefeated, 7-0, 4-0 in conference. They move up to number 11, and they've got a manageable schedule the rest of the way. At UCF coming up, Orlando on Saturday. BYU fans will show loud and proud. Then they roll up here to Rice Eccles Stadium after a bye for both teams. Should give both teams the opportunity to be healthy. At this point, depending on what happens this weekend, there's a chance BYU rolls up to Salt Lake as a pretty solid favorite in Vegas to beat Utah, which is something nobody saw coming. Like most of the projections, we talked about Brett McMurphy's projections a couple of segments ago. His new projections have both BYU and Iowa State in the CFP and Utah in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. Like, that's where we're at. And this is not week 1 or week 2. I mean, there's 8 or 9 of this stuff, 8 or 9 weeks behind us. Like, it is go time. Now, are you willing to expand your horizon? You fans, on this Monday afternoon, kick back and listen. Are you willing to look at the potential of head-to-head wins against BYU, Colorado, and Iowa State left on your schedule? And then chaos where both BYU and Iowa State got 2 other times. I don't know that I see that. Are you willing to expand your mind and open your horizons for the possibility of something special still left? Like maybe this OC switch lights the fire. Players are posting on social media, Dorian Singer, Landon King, among others, posting on social. They're clearly frustrated. They're clearly disappointed. And now this is the point where you see what you're made of. Football, sports, life. You learn a lot about yourself when you're down and out. Let's see what Utah football will learn about themselves coming up on Saturday against Houston. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. So essentially, more or less tonight, Derrick Henry, more or less 85 yards. Lamar Jackson, more or less 2 touchdowns, things like that. It's only you against the numbers. It's not you against 200,000 other people. So you have a legitimate shot to win if you actually have a little bit of sports knowledge. You sign up today, and you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. So here's what you do. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's downloading the Prize Picks app today using the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, joins us next right here on ESPN 700. I got a little Monday Night Football coming up for you guys after we say goodnight here in a few minutes. So you ever wonder why I complain about being a Jets fan? Like, you know, Russell Wilson gets the start.
I don't wonder.
Devontae Adams is on the roster. And then ultimately, it's the same old stuff. If I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. With all of the chaos at quarterback that the Jets have had, well, forever, quite frankly, I understand why you take a shot on Throw Rogan, but you have married yourself to the wrong dude. He's old, he's weird, and he blames everybody else. Like, I am so out on Aaron Rodgers. I would rather lose with him on the roster, honestly. Excuse me, I'd rather lose without him than win with him. That's
and
where I'm at with it.
I'm mostly with you, but to be clear, I don't wonder why you struggle being a Jets fan. I very much understand.
Another example over the weekend.
But yeah, it's not good in New York, and when things aren't good in New York, as you kind of alluded to there, things start to snowball. Things start to get into the media, and it's funny that Aaron Rodgers, who claims to not want to do that, he wants to just do his own thing and play football, goes out of his way to bring up the media and always makes it him versus them, even though he's the one that says he's not about it. That's how Aaron Rodgers operates. But he also, beyond all that, beyond the silly stuff that I don't really like off the field, he got outplayed by Russell Wilson last night.
He did.
And Russell Wilson was playing his first football game in a calendar year. So that is the bigger issue, that you have not a guy that's going to do whatever he wants in press conferences and whatever he wants in the offseason and on your off days, but you also have that guy who is playing like he's a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles injury, and that's what he is.
All right, I've not heard your take on this. Obviously, it's been a very, very busy news cycle day. Here's where I'll start. What are you willing to say about Utah football the rest of the way? All right, so we've already gone over the schedule. They have the opportunity for head-to-head wins against 3 of maybe the 4 best teams in the conference, including the top 2. If we hold on to the last branch before we fall flat on our face, we can still paint a picture and a path for Utah football to have something to say about this thing at the end. What are you willing to say about the Utes as of today?
Yeah, well, I'm not willing to say that they're going to, put on a run and contend for a conference title. I haven't seen that. And it hasn't just been about Andy Ludwig. It's been about Isaac and his communication with the O-line. It's been about a lot of other things besides just the play calling that has gotten this team to this point. So, say Mike Bajakian comes out and it looks really good against Houston. That's all fine and dandy, but it still leaves a few personnel things that I have highlighted on what is Utah going to do with this. And I'm not exactly sure I see those answers before we end this season, but what the next month can tell you about Utah football is what you can expect in 2025, in 2026. I don't mean to allude to the season being over. It's not. There's still football to be played. Utah can have an effect on the Big 12 by maybe going out and beating a BYU, going out and beating an Iowa State. But ultimately, not only do they not control their own destiny, I just don't really see the personnel on the sideline to make me feel like a huge turnaround is possible. That being said, you have BYU, you have Iowa State, you have games on your schedule where you can go out and make a statement to the conference. You can go and make a statement to your fans. And if you're Isaac Wilson, if you're some of the younger underclassmen, you can go make a statement to yourself about what this next iteration of Utah football is going to look like. And I think fans can be excited about that. Do I think they're going to, again, run the table and contend for the conference? I don't. But that's not the only perspective that we watch this game with. There's a lot of young players on that roster that have some growing to do. But I'm sure that's not what Brant Keithy and Mekhi Bernard and some of the upperclassmen want to hear. But it's kind of the reality of where we are a couple months into the season.
Congrats to the New York Liberty for winning the WNBA championship by winning Game 5, 67-62 in overtime.
Game 5? They don't even do 7 games?
It was 67-62 in overtime.
So you don't want 7 games?
Congratulations to Liberty.
Congrats.
Sabrina Ionescu was 1 of 19 and 1 of 10 from 3.
8 assists, though.
Let's get out of here. I'll be on TV with Dave Fox tonight, 10:35, KMYU. We call it 5 Questions with Spence. Porter, what comes our way on a Tuesday show?
On a Tuesday edition of the program, Spence, we'll go all over the map. I mentioned it earlier, obviously, RSL, Utah Hockey Club, Jazz. We are really, really busy this time of year. Scott Mitchell stops by the program. Of course, the former Ute and NFL quarterback. Amy Donaldson is in studio with us. Of course, she's got a little party today, launch party for her RSL podcast. So we'll chat with her, get the latest there, talk some MLS playoffs as well. Dave Fox stops by the program in person, and we're going to catch up with Omar Ruiz, talk a little NFL alongside of all the college football and local stuff here.
All right, there you go. Join us for a Tuesday show. We'll say goodnight, and a special thank you to Bill Riley and Tom Haberstroh, as well as Diego Luna and Josh Furlong. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show today, head over to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. App is called the ESPN 700 app. That's available in the App Store and the Google Play Store for free. And finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things, give us all the stars, and you will be eternally blessed. He's Porter. I'm Spence. Saying goodnight. Monday Night Football coming your way. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700.